Extracting World of Warcraft skills in American comics. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 301, Asgard is wounded. Boom bang, the sky was full of flames, and the buildings of Asgard were being destroyed by those terrifying demons. The tentacles with hooks were pulled out at will, and some towering buildings were destroyed. The hellfire was burning with green flames, and the thighs made of meteorites stomped on the buildings of Asgard, and suddenly, a building was flattened. On the road, some two-headed dogs were chasing the people of Asgard. The three warriors of Asgard were besieging a huge Abyss Lord with their army. The Abyss Lord held a strange weapon in his hand, and from time to time he smashed it down on the three warriors and other Asgardians. Raw, stupid and weak ants, your fate is destined to be devoured. Put down those ridiculous weapons, and accept the arrangement. The Abyss Lord showed his mouth full of sharp teeth, and said to the three warriors and others below, "Damn, our weapons can't have any effect on this guy." Sif, holding a long sword, said to the other two, "Thor just left, and these guys came. If he was here, how could they be so rampant?" Hagen, one of the three warriors, shouted angrily with two hammers in his hands. He just hit the thigh of the Abyss Lord with a hammer, but his weak power did not cause any harm to the Abyss Lord. Moreover, they still believed in Thor so much, not knowing that Thor could not deal with these demons at all, especially the huge tentacle monster. "Give up, ants," the Abyss Lord shouted again, and then he raised his weapon. As his voice fell, the sky suddenly turned red. Then the rain of fire fell from the sky and fell towards Asgard. Suddenly, Sif and others panicked and fled everywhere, trying to find shelter. Rainbow Bridge. Heimdall held his great sword and looked at the two-headed giant dogs rushing towards him with caution. Looking at the two-headed dogs that were getting closer and closer, Heimdall turned his head to look at the device that activated the Rainbow Bridge and then ran directly there. He inserted the big sword in his hand into the device and then turned it clockwise. At this time, the two-headed dogs had rushed in front of him and then pounced on him, biting Heimdall with their fangs. Heimdall kicked directly at a giant dog that was close to him. Bang, the powerful force kicked the two-headed dog several meters away, but there were too many two-headed dogs, and he couldn't stop all of them. There were still several two-headed dogs hanging on his body. The sharp teeth went straight through his armor, biting his body tightly and not letting go. Heimdall had a lot of blood on his body, and his big hands were still tightly holding the big sword in his hands, without any relaxation. He only wanted to find their current king back, to deal with this crisis. As for the injuries on his body, he didn't care. At the same time, on Earth, Mei Gan and others who had just returned to the block were just sitting at the table next to the turret, and they hadn't had time to drink a few sips of wine. The colorful light fell not far from the crowd. Looking at the colorful light falling on the road, Mei Gan's face suddenly darkened. Thor and Loki, who were holding a glass of wine next to them, shook their hands involuntarily. After that, Thor and the others were a little confused. They didn't summon Heimdall to send them back. Why did the Rainbow Bridge start, and the Rainbow Bridge was still shining? It seemed that it would dissipate in the next moment. No, something happened in Asgard. Loki reacted quickly enough, shouted, and then directly pulled Thor towards the colorful light. Thor's heart immediately became anxious when he heard this. Follow Loki and run towards the colorful light. Mei Gan, who didn't care much at first, frowned slightly when he heard Loki's words. He secretly thought, what else could happen to Asgard at this time? Could it be that Odin's former enemy attacked? However, thinking of Odin's plea to him before his death, Mei Gan dispersed his mental power to see what happened in Asgard. If Thor and the others could handle it themselves, it would be fine. If they couldn't handle it, he would take action. He was indeed destined to be a hard worker. Thinking of this, Mei Gan's mental power was close to Asgard. At the same time, he also saw some demons that were wreaking havoc in Asgard. He didn't expect that there were still some that slipped through the net. Mei Gan frowned slightly. It seemed that he had to take action himself. How could Thor and those rotten potatoes in Asgard resist these demons? Mei, what happened? Although he didn't know why Thor and the others were in such a hurry to go back, but there must have been some changes in Asgard. Steve wanted to contribute his own strength. Although Mei Gan was there, they might not need to take action, but it would be good to stand over and serve as a number. Those demons slipped through the net. It is estimated that they left before we arrived, Mei Gan said. Then let's go now. We didn't contribute in the battle just now. You have to let us move around this time. Steve bumped his fist and said excitedly. Looking at Steve, who was excited, Mei Gan could only nod his head. Banner on the side also felt excited. After all, Hulk was taught a lesson by Thanos last time. After so much communication, Hulk finally came out. Let him vent. Then let's go. Looking at the people who were ready to move, Mei Gan shrugged and directly launched a group teleport. Suddenly, a blue light emerged and the figures of everyone disappeared beside the turret. At the door of the physical therapy center, Uncle Kyan, who had just walked out and wanted to say something to Mei Gan, suddenly muttered speechlessly. This stinky boy ran so fast, I wanted to ask him if he would come back for dinner. After saying that, Uncle Kyan turned and went back to the physical therapy center. Not long after Mei Gan and others disappeared, a figure suddenly appeared on the roof of Banner's house. The man was hiding in a black hoodie, with only his red pupils clearly visible. However, at this moment, RX-22 wolf calls came from both sides, and the warning could be clearly heard in the sound. The man's red pupils flickered when he heard the words, and then he turned around and started to flee. He never thought that he had taken advantage of the gatekeeper leaving the gate to find out from the gatekeeper that the so-called heroes were not there. There are still such terrifying monsters here. If the three of them were together, he would not be afraid, but those two guys didn't know where they ran to. Now he was alone. How could he deal with these two magic wolves? And there were also the three defense towers standing there. He could clearly feel the power hidden in the defense towers. This time he was too impatient. If he had asked more questions, it would have been better. Not long after the man in black left, Adam and Eve appeared in front of Banner's house. Feeling that the man had left, Adam and Eve turned around and walked back to where they came from. Chapter 302, The Battle of Asgard. Outside a planet in the universe, Star-Lord took Rocket Raccoon and others on a spaceship and hurriedly left the planet. They all had fear on their faces. They never thought that such a terrifying thing would attack this planet. If they hadn't reacted quickly and their spaceship was relatively close to them, they might have died on this planet. What the hell is this thing? It's so terrifying that even the breath they emit is going to overwhelm us, Rocket Raccoon said with some fear in his heart. Who knows, where should we go now? Nebula sat aside and looked at Star-Lord and asked. Nebula, who was supposed to betray Thanos and join Star-Lord and others in a while, accepted the invitation of her sister Gamora to join the Guardians of the Galaxy after witnessing Thanos' death. Let's go find May. He should know the origin of these monsters. If these monsters continue to wreak havoc like this, I don't know how many planets will be destroyed. Star-Lord, who was driving the spaceship, turned his head and looked at the terrifying scene behind him and said to several people, "Then jump over quickly," Rocket Raccoon said, and then he grabbed Groot on the ground and sat directly in an empty seat, fastening his seatbelt. "Hold on tight," Star-Lord said to the others again. Then, the spaceship shook violently, and then the entire spaceship disappeared directly from the spot. Asgard. At the Rainbow Bridge, Heimdall was almost unable to hold on. His body was covered with wounds. Several two-headed giant dogs bit his body and refused to let go. Blood gushed out of his body as if it was free, and his clothes were soaked. The blood dripped to the ground, and the ground where he was standing turned red. Fortunately, he had already picked up Thor and Loki, and he could have a good rest. A colorful light flashed. The figures of Thor and Loki appeared on the spot. As soon as the two appeared, they saw the miserable Heimdall. The eyes of the two immediately turned red. Seeing the two people appear, Heimdall's mouth slightly raised, and then his body could not support and fell backwards. "Heimdall!" Thor shouted, and then he stretched out his right hand. Bang! A lightning suddenly appeared and fell on his hand, and Thor's new warhammer appeared in his hand. Raising the warhammer in his hand, Thor jumped up and smashed down on the two-headed dogs. Bang! Lightning appeared on the warhammer. Carrying those powerful lightning, Thor's warhammer fell directly on a two-headed dog. A shockwave spread in all directions with the warhammer as the center. Flipped over the two-headed dogs that rushed towards the two people. Beside, Loki turned his hands up and two sharp daggers appeared in his hands. The light on his body flashed and his body was wrapped in clothes and armor. As a mage, Loki rushed towards the two-headed dogs with two daggers in hand. He came to a two-headed dog that was overturned on the ground and suddenly pointed the dagger in his hand at one of the two-headed dog's heads. Swish, the sharp dagger pierced into one of the two-headed dog's heads without any hindrance. However, at this moment, not far from Loki, the two-headed dog that had already turned over and stood up rushed directly towards Loki. Bang! Loki was hit directly by the two-headed dog. He only felt a sudden pain in his body and then he flew towards the wall not far away like a cloud. Thor, who had killed another two-headed dog not far away, saw Loki's appearance and his face suddenly changed and then he suddenly threw the hammer in his hand towards Loki. The hammer was like a purple lightning that cut through the space and then bang! The two-headed dog that rushed straight towards Loki was directly smashed to pieces by the hammer thrown by Thor with all his strength. The two-headed dog's pieces of flesh fell to the ground. A foul smell immediately floated in the space, and Loki, who had just fallen to the ground and rolled around, couldn't help but cover his nostrils. Stupid Tony, can you not be so violent? Seeing the blood and flesh fragments splashing on his body, Loki shouted with some dissatisfaction. Shut up, Loki, go see Heimdall quickly. Thor recalled his warhammer and then smashed a two-headed dog to death with one hammer and shouted at Loki. Loki was a little dissatisfied when he heard it. His stupid elder brother actually dared to scold him. If it wasn't the right time, he would have to play with him. Thinking of this, Loki didn't bother with his elder brother for the time being and hurriedly walked towards Heimdall, not caring about the pieces of flesh on his body. Loki ran to Heimdall's side and helped Heimdall up, who was lying on the ground. Loki looked at Heimdall, who was covered in blood on the ground. He only had his last breath left. If he was not treated, he might not be saved soon. No, Heimdall must be taken to his mother for treatment first, otherwise he will really be beyond saving. After thinking about it, Loki ran towards the rainbow bridge with Heimdall in his arms with the help of Thor. Not long after, bang boom, a huge tentacle fell from the sky and landed on the roof, directly flipping the roof over. Huge rocks fell to the ground. Then, a huge tentacle stretched out from the roof and swept towards Thor, who was killing the two-headed dog. Thor sensed the murderous intent coming towards him and quickly raised the warhammer in his hand to block the tentacle. Bang! The two collided and the huge warhammer intersected with the tentacle, making a huge sound. Then Thor's figure fell directly onto the rainbow bridge like a cannonball. His figure fell beside Loki, who was holding Heimdall. Loki turned and looked at Thor, who fell to the side, and a panic suddenly rose in his heart. His big brother was actually smashed out of here. Although his elder brother was a little stupid, he was very powerful. How could he be knocked out of here in such a short time? The huge tentacle monster was floating above Asgard, and its tentacles were sweeping down to the ground of Asgard. And the tentacle that just hit Thor was just a tentacle that the tentacle monster dropped at random. So how powerful is this huge monster? Loki looked up at the tentacle monster above his head, and panic flashed in his eyes. Is Asgard really going to be destroyed today? Just now, when he saw Mei killing these monsters, it was very easy. But it was also true that how could Thor compare with Mei? Loki began to figure it out. On the ground, Thor was struggling to stand up. Behind them, the tentacle was still approaching, and there were two-headed dogs chasing behind. Just at this time, a blue magic circle suddenly appeared beside the two of them. Swoosh, white light flashed. Then Mei Gan and everyone appeared beside Thor and the others. Mei, why are you here? The moment they saw Mei Gan and the others, Thor and Loki immediately showed their surprise. After all, as long as Mei Gan was there, their Asgard would be saved. Chapter 303 Halo Full Open. Marvel Universe. Asgard. On the Rainbow Bridge, Mei Gan looked at Thor, who had just stood up, and Loki, who was holding Heimdall, nodded, and then said to them, Odin came to me in person and asked me to take good care of Asgard in the future, so I came here. Mei Gan, can you please save Heimdall? He is about to die. Loki walked to Mei Gan with Heimdall in his arms and looked at him expectantly. Mei Gan did not reply, glanced at Heimdall, then nodded, and gently waved his right hand towards Heimdall in his arms, and a golden light fell on Heimdall. In the blink of an eye, Heimdall, who had been unconscious, began to wake up. Okay, Steve, don't you want to move around? Now it's up to you to do it. After Mei Gan cured Heimdall, he turned to look at Steve and others and said, quick, give us some form, otherwise how can we beat these guys? Tony summoned the Mark armor, then walked to Mei Gan's side and said. Mei Gan nodded. The light in his hand flashed, and a blue staff appeared in his hand. Mei Gan waved the staff in his hand, and rays of light emerged from the staff, and then fell on everyone. Under his feet, a huge halo appeared as Mei Gan waved the staff in his hand. The halo composed of runes was extremely mysterious and spread directly to the entire Asgard. Thorn halo, blood-sucking halo, brilliant halo, concentration halo, durable halo, etc. The layers of halo on the ground were as fast as lightning. In an instant, they had fallen on every piece of land in Asgard. As the halo emerged, the Asgardians in the battle immediately felt the sudden surge of power and the recovering injuries in their bodies. Although they were full of doubts, it was not the time to seek answers. They raised their weapons again and rushed towards the demons. The weapon in the hand of the Abyss Lord fell straight to the ground. On the ground, Sif, who was standing facing the Abyss Lord, had a look of determination on her face, and then she held the long sword and slashed at the weapon of the Abyss Lord. She had to do so because behind her were two other warriors who were seriously injured and unable to escape. Sif had to stand in front of them. At the same time, under their feet, rays of light of different colors appeared. In an instant, Sif, who thought she was going to die, suddenly emerged with infinite power, and her exhausted body had fully recovered. She had not had time to feel the power in her body. Bang, the long sword intersected with the weapon. There was a deafening sound, and Sif stood still, keeping the posture of swinging the sword. However, the Abyss Lord, who had been suppressing them and forcing them to flee, was flying in the air with his huge body. Bang, the Abyss Lord's body fell to the ground. A huge pit was smashed directly on the ground of Asgard, and dust splashed up, blocking the eyes of Hill and others. Hogun and the other two were lying on the ground, staring at the Abyss Lord, who was chopped away by Sif. How could this be possible? Sif's strength was similar to Thor's. How could she beat this terrifying demon? Could it be that Sif was teasing them just now, hiding her strength all the time, and only revealed her strength at the critical moment? The two people who had been watching Sif just didn't notice the halo emerging from the ground, nor did they notice that their injuries were beginning to recover. In front, Sif was also very surprised. She spread out her calloused hands. How could she have such a huge power? Then her eyes noticed the glowing runes on the ground. What is this? Sif turned her head to look at the two people behind her and said in surprise. Hogun and the others heard this and then saw the halo on the ground. They were also confused. Could it be that this thing gave Sif such a powerful power? At this time, Sif noticed that the two people's faces were no longer pale, and they didn't look like injured people at all. Your injuries are healed. Hearing this, the two of them looked away from the ground, then looked at each other, stood up suddenly, clenched their fists excitedly, and said excitedly, our injuries are not only healed, but also full of strength. After the two finished speaking, they found their weapons again, and looked fiercely at the Abyss Lord, who had clearly appeared in front of them. They were forced so badly just now, and now they have to take revenge. This must be the power left by the God King Odin. Praise the God King. If Mei Gan knew what they were thinking, he would probably take back his magic power directly, turn around and leave, and let them fend for themselves. I worked hard to add status to them. I even gave my credit to the dead Odin. Well, although it's not hard work. When the dust cleared, the Abyss Lord was filled with resentment. A weak human could actually knock him away like this. Why did this happen? The Abyss Lord stood up from the ground, and then looked at Sif with some doubt. He also noticed the halo that suddenly appeared below, but he didn't care at all now. However, more than 10 seconds later, his face changed directly. Even his ugly face could show the ugly expression. The Abyss Lord could feel that the vitality in his body was slowly moving towards the halos underground. What on earth is this thing, and who is using it? On the opposite side, Volstagg holding a battle axe, Hogun holding a round hammer, and Sif holding a long sword. The three of them spread out, surrounded the Abyss Lord, and then rushed towards the Abyss Lord. The three of them raised their weapons and hit him hard. In the eyes of the Abyss Lord, the weapon seemed to be as big as a chopstick, but it contained great power. It was all because of the halos on the ground. He now thought clearly that it was definitely the fault of the halos on the ground. Over at the palace, Frigga was holding a long sword and was surrounded by two beholders floating in the air. Fortunately, Frigga was quite flexible and had been able to dodge the ray shot from the beholder's eyes. Otherwise she would have had several more holes on her body. Although she had been dodging the attacks of the beholders, it was impossible to dodge them all the time. Look. A beholder that had been attacking Frigga with rays shot out two rays, knocking Frigga to the ground. Frigga had just turned over, and the ray attack of another beholder had already arrived. Frigga had no choice but to dodge again. Just as Frigga turned over and stood up again, a beholder suddenly rushed towards Frigga and then suddenly knocked Frigga, who had just stood up, away. The powerful force directly broke several of Frigga's ribs. Frigga was injured and fell far away. She had no strength to stand up. She could only watch the light flashing in the eyes of another beholder, who was about to shoot her. At this moment, a figure in armor suddenly rushed out from the side, holding a spear, and then fiercely stabbed the beholder who wanted to attack. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 304 Untitled. Marvel Universe. Asgard. Frigga watched her daughter Hela kill a beholder with weapons and armor she had found from nowhere. Although Hela's power was sealed by Mei Gan, she was an Asgardian after all, and her physical fitness was still very strong. She could still kill a beholder with the physical strength in her body. Moreover, she had fought for many years and had a lot of combat experience. Steve probably didn't have as much combat experience as her. Hela pulled out the weapon from the beholder and then ran towards Frigga lying on the ground, completely ignoring the existence of the other beholder. At this time, another beholder, with light in its eyes, suddenly shot a ray towards Hela who was walking towards Frigga. Frigga, who had been paying attention to Hela, suddenly panicked. She quickly shouted, "Hela, be careful." With Hela's combat experience, she would not ignore the other beholder, but she was too worried about Frigga. After all, Frigga was her last concern, and her only concern. And recently, she has been following Frigga's side. That's her mother, and they have always had feelings for each other. Unlike the two younger brothers, they met for the first time after coming out of the seal, and they had no feelings at all. Hela heard Frigga's cry and turned her head to look, but she only saw a ray of light flashing in front of her eyes, and then she felt a pain in her chest, and then she floated towards the sky. Her consciousness was slowly dissipating. Hela finally turned her head to look at Frigga, and Hela's eyes showed nostalgia and reluctance. Frigga endured the pain in her body, got up from the ground, and then ran towards Hela. At this moment, the light extended from the ground and instantly came under the two of them. Hela, whose consciousness was dissipating, suddenly felt that her consciousness seemed to be recovering rapidly. She felt that she could control her body again. There were waves of pain coming from the wound, accompanied by a hint of warmth. It seemed that her wound was recovering. This was someone treating her injuries. Hela was not more seriously injured than her. Frigga, who had just stood up, could no longer feel the pain in her body. She looked at the halo on the ground that was emitting light. It should be the effect of these halos. Frigga temporarily put all this behind her and picked up the long sword that fell on the ground. Frigga rushed towards the remaining eye demons with the long sword in hand. A few sword lights flashed, and the eye demon that had just forced her into a mess was chopped into pieces by her. The sudden power in her body made it very easy for her to kill the eye demon. Frigga knew that if she didn't kill the eye demon first, even if Hela was not dead, the two of them would still be in danger. Now she could go and see Hela's injuries. Frigga rushed to Hela's side and was about to help her up, but she saw Hela supporting herself on the ground with one hand and slowly sitting up. What a powerful magic. Frigga couldn't help but sigh. "I'm not dead." Hela touched the wound on her body in disbelief and then murmured to herself, You're fine. It should be the magician from Earth who came. Otherwise I can't think of anyone who has such a terrible magic. Frigga pulled Hela up and then replied to Hela. It's that guy. Hearing this, Hela immediately gritted her silver teeth and said with some resentment. She always remembered the scene at the beginning. That hateful guy just waved his hand lightly and sealed her power. Child, you can't hate that magician. If you want to hate me, and you are not his opponent. Don't be stupid. Frigga took Hela's hand and said to her softly, I'm not that stupid, Thor. How can I go to him for revenge? I just want to get my power back. Hela didn't pull back her hand and said with some dissatisfaction on her face, I will communicate with him. Don't worry. And now you are no longer the same as before. Frigga patted the back of Hela's hand gently and said with a smile, let's hope so. After saying that, Hela looked up at the terrifying demon floating above their heads in the sky. As Mei Gan's halo spread, the Asgardian warriors who were defeated by the demons began to fight back against the demons after feeling the sudden increase in their strength, especially because of the participation of Tony and others. The demons have begun to decrease one by one. Soon, the terrifying demons that descended on Asgard were left with huge tentacle monsters floating in the air. Bang Banner, who turned into Hulk, smashed the last demon to pieces and then looked up at the huge tentacle monster in the sky. Raw Hulk clenched his fists and roared at the tentacle monster. At this time, a chain burning with flames flew out from the ground and then directly wrapped around a tentacle not far away. It was Johnny, who turned into Ghost Rider and threw the chain on his body. Hulk was stunned when he saw the chain and then rushed towards the chain excitedly. He came to the side of Ghost Rider. Hulk grabbed the chain from his hand and then used all his strength to pull the tentacle monster in the air to the ground. Thor and others who were not far away saw Hulk's action and hurriedly ran towards Hulk, trying to pull the tentacle monster to the ground together. Just when the battle in Asgard happened, on the planet Azeroth, on the elf base below light shone. Two petite figures suddenly appeared beside the Elder's altar. When the two petite figures were about to quietly run out of the valley, Tyrann's figure appeared in front of the two. Little sissy, Nora, what are you doing here secretly again? Tyrann got off the white tiger and looked at the two little guys with a gentle expression. Ah, it's Aunt Tyrann. We are here to pick fruits to eat. That's right. Little sissy and the others quickly stood up and said to Tyrann, really? Didn't I just ask someone to pick some fruits and send them over yesterday? Tyrann said with some disbelief. That's my dad and mom's fault. They always eat up all the fruits. Little sissy said with some dissatisfaction. Okay, then you can go to the orchard and pick some fruits to take back. But you can't run out of this valley. Tyrann was stunned at first after hearing this, thinking that she would send more next time, and finally said to the two, got it. X to the two little guys got approval and then ran directly to the orchard. The two wanted to pick fruits, but it was fake. In fact, they came to this planet to find the destruction god to play. After the two came to the orchard, they first picked a bag of fruits, and then little sissy took out two cloaks from behind and put them on her and Nora. In the blink of an eye, the figures of the two disappeared from the spot. The two little guys looked at each other, smiled at each other, and then ran outside secretly. Chapter 305. Leave the big devil to me. Pink Iron Man. Marvel Asgard planet. Not far from the elves base. Little sissy and her partner held hands, each holding a piece of fruit, taking a bite from time to time, and happily walked towards the distance. Little sissy, wait for us to take a photo with that big guy and go back to NVE into death. Nora took a bite of the fruit in her hand and said to little sissy, of course, that guy actually went to show his courtesy to that guy in a humph. I'm the most annoying when Anna always calls me a little one. Little sissy shouted very dissatisfiedly. That's right, he actually betrayed us. The two little guys began to condemn Ian one by one. Just at this time, boom, not far ahead, the space rippled and a large spaceship jumped out of the space. Then it fell to the ground next to the planet. The spaceship fell to the ground, crushing some trees and tossing the small hill in front of it. Little sissy and her partner stopped talking, looked at each other first, then got excited and ran towards the spaceship. While running, little sissy shouted, Sister Nora, let's grab that spaceship, then we can go on an adventure in the universe and be a space adventurer. Just like on TV, we have to hurry up, otherwise Tyrant and the others will be here soon. Nora nodded her head fiercely and shouted to little Sissy, run faster. The two little guys ran straight to the spaceship hand in hand. Next to the spaceship. Fuck, Quill, do you know how to fly a spaceship? Is this how you landed? You're committing murder, do you know? The hatch of the spaceship opened, and Rocket Raccoon staggered out of the spaceship. As he walked, the raccoon cursed. If you hadn't been nagging beside me, would the spaceship be like this? So it's your fault in the end. Quill followed the raccoon out of the spaceship, his body also staggering. Then, Gamora and others also got off the spaceship. One by one, they staggered down from the spaceship, like they were drunk. Several people came to the ground, and then sat down on the ground without caring whether the ground was dirty or not. Then, they glared at Star-Lord one by one, and accusations came out of their mouths. Quill was furious, but he was thicker than a city wall, and didn't think it was an insult to himself. He took out his Walkman from his arms and started dancing. He is worthy of being the Marvel Dance King. At this time, footsteps came from not far away. Except for Quill, who was dancing with his eyes closed with his Walkman. The others put away the expressions when they accused Quill just now, and looked warily in the direction of the footsteps. Rocket Raccoon and Nebula took out the energy guns they carried with them, and pointed the muzzles in that direction. After a while, several people saw little Sissy's little head sticking out from behind a big tree, and her little face was looking curiously at the spaceship. When little Sissy saw Rocket Raccoon, she immediately smiled and shouted happily, "Sister Nora, come out quickly, it's the Red Panda and the little tree man." When Gamora and others saw that the person coming was little Sissy, they immediately nervously put the guns in Nebula and Rocket's hands back behind them. They were afraid that the two guys would accidentally fire and hurt the little princess, otherwise they would be waiting for Mei's anger. "Waiter, little Sissy, I'm a raccoon, not those idiots like Red Panda," Rocket shouted dissatisfiedly after hearing what little Sissy said. "But you really look alike." Little Sissy tilted her head and looked at Rocket. Rocket opened his mouth, but finally did not refute little Sissy. At this time, Groot poked his little head out from behind Rocket, and the moment he saw little Sissy, he ran towards little Sissy excitedly. "I'm Groot." Little Sissy grabbed Groot and said happily to Nora beside her, "Look, Sister Nora, isn't Groot cute? You saw him last time too." Nora didn't answer, her eyes were bright, and she kept nodding her head. "Little Sissy, are you two the only ones?" Gamora walked in front of her, squatted down and asked little Sissy. "Yes. We ran out secretly to play with that big, flaming guy." At the end of the conversation, the little guy realized that he seemed to have let something slip and quickly covered his mouth with his little hand, turning his head to look at Nora a little embarrassed. "You actually ran out secretly. Aren't you afraid that your father will know and spank you?" Gamora looked at little Sissy's cute appearance and said jokingly, "He won't spank me, but can you please not tell them that Sister Nora and I went to take a photo and then went back?" Little Sissy looked at Gamora and others with an expectant expression. "That won't do. I have to take you back, and I have something urgent to do to find your father." Gamora took Sissy's hand and then took the two little guys back to the base of the Night Elves. "Okay." Hearing this, the little guy looked at Gamora and others with some regret, and just as he was about to take action, he asked again, "Why are you looking for my father?" "Of course it's a big deal. It's better to talk to your father about this kind of thing. Children don't need to worry about it," Rocket Raccoon said to the little guy after jumping off a big rock. "Oh, I'm curious. Just tell me." The little guy looked at Gamora expectantly with his two big eyes and kept talking to Gamora in a coquettish way. At this moment, Gamora broke the defense and stopped. She told the little guy everything that happened on the planet. He didn't notice at all that the little guy's eyes were shining when he heard these things, and I don't know what he was thinking. "Okay, I've told you what's going on. Let's go. Let's go find your father." After Gamora finished speaking, she took the two little guys and was about to walk into the valley again. The little guy showed an excited smile on his face, and then the smile on his face turned into a smirk. He said a few words entangled Gamora and others, who didn't understand, were about to turn around and look at the little guy to ask what it meant. However, at this moment, vines suddenly sprang out from the ground and tied Gamora and others tightly. Little sissy, what are you doing? Quill, who had already taken off his Walkman, looked at the vines on his body and asked the little guy with some doubts. They were not panicked in their hearts. They believed that the cute little girl in front of them would not hurt them. Sister Gamora, just take me to that planet. I, Pink Iron Man, will take care of the big devil. Little sissy put her hands on her waist and said proudly, no, if your father finds out, it will be the end of us. Quill shook his head and refused. The others also shook their heads. Oh, what are you afraid of? My dad won't know. Besides, I'll just deal with them and go home right away. How could he know? Little sissy said again. No. Several people said in unison. Chapter 306. I almost lost a friend. In the universe, a spaceship was shuttling through space. On the spaceship, Quill and the others were sitting in chairs with a depressed look on their faces. Rocket Raccoon was driving the spaceship, turned his head, and looked at the two little guys who were very happy, and immediately regretted it. In the end, several people told the little guys the location. Not only told the location, but also took them directly there. There was no way. When they saw the little guy turned Quill into a little frog, several people surrendered directly. They would rather die than live as a little frog. They didn't know that the transformation was time limited, so it was like this. If they knew that there was a time limit now, they probably wouldn't follow the two little guys to make trouble. Little sissy, promise your sister, we will just take a look from a distance and run away, do you know? Gamora was still a little worried and said with a serious expression. Don't worry, Sister Gamora, I know what to do, the little guy said easily. Okay, I hope you know what to do. Gamora was still a little worried, but she didn't say anything else and turned her head to look at the space outside the window. The spaceship kept jumping in the space under Rocket's hand, heading towards the destination. In Asgard, the miserable tentacle monster had been pulled to the ground by Hulk and others. Now it was besieged by Hulk and others. Hulk's green fist was constantly bombarding the body of the tentacle monster, and the sound of thunder could be heard from a distance. Not far away, Steve was holding a big knife, cutting off those who were pulling at them. On the ground, many tentacles had already piled up. Thor and Tony were flying in the air. Thor occasionally attracted a lightning bolt to strike the giant mouth full of sharp teeth at the top of the tentacle monster. Boom! Several miniature missiles rushed out from Tony's shoulders and fell on the giant mouth, exploding with flames all over the sky. Although the tentacle monster was not seriously injured, it still made the tentacle monster scream in pain. The sharp sound reached everyone's ears. This sound was like the sound of a giant snake, and it felt so creepy. But everyone did not stop. All of them used their most powerful attacks and bombarded the tentacle monster. Bang bang. Explosions resounded throughout the sky. Not far away, Frigga led Hela and Sis 3 warriors to the last battlefield. Frigga looked at Thor, who was attacking the tentacle monster, with a worried look. However, when Frigga saw Mei Gan not far away, she relaxed. Fortunately, the magician was there. Hela also saw Mei Gan's figure. She looked at Mei Gan with a complicated look, then turned her head and looked at the tentacle monster being besieged by everyone. However, she glanced at Mei Gan from time to time, and it was known that she was not very calm. Hela was still a little afraid of Mei Gan. On the other side, Mei Gan was standing not far from the center of the battlefield. Behind him, Loki was bending down and respectfully holding Mei Gan's staff, just like the eunuch who followed the emperor in ancient times. I don't know where he learned this set of moves. Mei Gan didn't ask him to help with the staff. Who knew this guy insisted on helping? Mei Gan had to let him do it, but now he felt very comfortable from time to time, as if he had bullied him before, and in front of his mother. Time passed little by little. Half an hour later, as Hulk took the long knife thrown by Steve and slashed at the tentacle monster, the war in Asgard had come to an end. In front of Mei Gan, Tony and others stood together, looking at the huge piece of meat that was torn into pieces not far away. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Although it didn't take a long time to fight with these demons, and Mei Gan had added status for them. but it would still be tiring to keep tense. Later, Mei Gan saw that all the demons had been dealt with by them, so he went to the staff held in Loki's hand behind him. He gently tapped the ground with the staff in his hand. In an instant, the slowly rotating halo on the ground gathered towards Mei Gan's feet. It was just a moment of effort. Those halos disappeared in front of everyone. As the halos disappeared, they also felt that powerful force disappearing in their bodies. Everyone felt a sense of emptiness in their bodies, just like the sage time several times later. They had no interest in anything. Mei Gan took the staff back into his own space, so as not to be snatched by Loki, and hold it in his hand again, which always made him feel uncomfortable. Mei Gan did not notice that as he put the staff back into the space, Loki behind him showed a look of regret. Loki wanted to hold Mei Gan's thigh tightly. If Mei Gan accepted him as his little brother, then he, Loki, would be able to run rampant in this universe. Think about how beautiful that scene would be, and he would be able to tease anyone he wanted. Alas, what a pity. Loki shook his head with some regret. See, my Tony is still quite brave. Tony, who had taken back the Mark armor, walked to Mei Gan's side, put his arm around Mei Gan's shoulders and boasted. Stop bragging, Tony. If it weren't for the status I added to you, you would have such strength. Mei Gan rolled his eyes at Tony and said directly, hey, man, can you let me be proud first? It's meaningless. Tony said regretfully. By the way, Mei, why do I feel that the demon just now looks very similar to the one you summoned at the beginning, the stone burning with green flames? I wanted to ask you over there, but I forgot. Tony said to Mei Gan again. Not very similar, but originally, the hellfires I summoned are the products of their world, but the ones I summoned are equivalent to my subordinates. Mei Gan explained casually. So, you are from their world? Tony asked in confusion. No, I just know some knowledge of their world. Mei Gan didn't mind letting them know this information, and answered casually. After all, at his level, even if they knew which world he came from or what magic he knew, so what? Anyway, he was already invincible. Okay, I thought you were from that world, and you forgot the way home when you came here. Now they are here, you can go back. It was a close call. I almost lost a friend, Tony said, patting his chest in fear. He didn't see that Mei Gan was staring at him with murderous eyes. What do you mean by almost lost a friend? He made it seem like he was going to die. Aren't you cursing yourself? It seems that this guy deserves a beating. Get out of here. Mei Gan took Tony's hand off him and then kicked him on the butt, kicking him several meters away. Tony looked at Mei Gan with grievance and confusion. How did he offend him again? Hey, like a woman, he gets angry from time to time. Never mind, I won't bother with him. Tony shook his head pretending to be generous. Chapter 307. I'm also very strong. In the Doom universe. Swoosh, a white light flashed, and then a spaceship appeared in a corner of the universe. Where the spaceship landed, countless meteorites were floating irregularly, densely packed. And on those meteorites, traces of life activities, some building wreckage or some technological products can be vaguely seen. On the spaceship, Rocket Raccoon and others frowned and looked at the meteorites floating beside the spaceship. It used to be a prosperous planet, but now it has become some fragments, floating in the universe, without a trace of life. Only traces of their past activities are left. What a sad thing. Sister Gamora, are we about to arrive? On the glass window of the spaceship, the clever little sissy looked at a meteorite that had just floated by, turned her head, and looked at Gamora next to her and asked, yes. Fly a little further ahead, and you will reach the planet you used to be on, but now they have been destroyed. Gamora was a little sad, because there were still a few friends she knew on that planet. And next to her, the destroyer also showed a sad expression. It seems that he also has friends on that planet. Don't be sad, Sister Gamora, he will pay the price later. Little Sissy patted Gamora's shoulder comfortingly like a little adult, and then said with a smile, Little Sissy, you'd better not mess around. Otherwise, I will go back directly. Gamora was shocked when she heard it, and then she took the little guy's hand and said, Don't worry. As soon as the voice fell, Little Sissy and others saw the huge tentacle monster floating in the universe. It was heading to the next target with various demons. Behind them, there were some huge grey fragments. That was the land of that planet, but now it has dimmed. The demons floating in space also found the spaceship where the little guy and others were, and suddenly, they all stopped there. The terrifying demons were staring straight at the spaceship. Fuck, we've been discovered. Rocket, run. When seeing the demons turn their heads to look at them, Quill shouted anxiously to Rocket. I know. However, it was too late. The space in front of the spaceship suddenly began to vibrate, and then a huge tentacle stretched out from the space. It was winding straight towards the spaceship. In space, the hellfires burning with hellfire were striding towards the spaceship. It's over. Everything is over. Seeing this scene, Nebula said uncomfortably. As soon as she finished speaking, the entire spaceship began to vibrate violently. The tentacle with sharp hooks had already tightly wrapped around the spaceship. The demons surrounded the spaceship, just like a cat catching a mouse, and was about to play with it. However, he didn't know that the mouse might be called Jerry or the unlucky Tomcat. Although Nebula was a little frustrated, Gamora, Rocket and others took out their weapons and prepared to fight these demons to the end. Little sissy, stand behind us. If you can contact your father, it will be even better. If you can't, just activate the escape device and run away. Remember, press this button. We will buy time for you. Gamora carried little Sissy and little Nora to a seat in a corner and said earnestly, it's not that serious. Sister Gamora, you should know that I'm also very strong. After little Sissy finished speaking, she gently pressed the watch on her hand, and then a pink battle armor appeared on her body. Don't mess around, little Sissy. Quill next to him also said worriedly. Before he finished speaking, he felt the spaceship vibrate more violently. Then, cracks began to appear at the rear of the spaceship. A huge claw inserted into the hard hull. Cracking the sound came again, and the hull had begun to crack. Quill and others clenched their weapons in their hands and looked at the stern with vigilant eyes. At this time, little Sissy took out the huge battle axe artifact and then waved her left hand gently, and a golden dome tightly wrapped Quill and others. Hey, Sister Gamora, you should stay in there quietly. I, a superhero, will take care of these ugly monsters. Little Sissy smiled sweetly at Gamora and others, then pulled down the mask on her face and walked towards the stern. No, little Sissy, Gamora and others shouted in a panic, and then rushed towards the little guy, but the golden magic dome blocked them. No matter how they attacked, they could not get out of the magic barrier. The little guy walked towards the stern with a relaxed look. At the same time, the stern was torn apart by a huge monster. It was a horned dreadlord. The dreadlord showed a cruel smile and stared at little Sissy. What a delicious food. This will be my dinner today, the dreadlord said with a few sharp teeth. Hey, ugly bastard, are you kidding me? You want to eat me? Try the power of my axe first. After saying that, little Sissy disappeared from the spot. Bang, before the dreadlord could react, his figure had already disappeared from the spot, flying into space. Such a weak demon. Little Sissy appeared at the position of the dreadlord just now, holding a battle axe in her hand, tilting her head, and said in disbelief, doesn't the book say that demons are very powerful? Those books are all lies. Behind the little guy, Gamora and others looked at little Sissy in surprise. They never thought that little Sissy would be so powerful. Although little Sissy used magic to control them just now, it was because they did not resist. They were very sure in their hearts that if they resisted, they would definitely be able to take down the little guy. But they were afraid of hurting the little guy. However, it was this little girl who smashed the seemingly powerful demon away with an axe. They saw with their own eyes that the demon blasted a building into pieces. Was he so weak against little Sissy? The little girl in front ignored them. She held the battle axe in her hand and walked towards the demons that were surrounding them. Then, from time to time, the light would light up and the waves of attack would shake the spaceship. Through the glass, they saw that little Sissy's figure was constantly disappearing. With her appearance, a dread demon or hellhound would be smashed away. At this time, a golden light appeared from a distance and flew straight towards them. Chapter 308. Not even a hair will be left. In the universe, the golden light rushed towards the two-headed dog, smashing it to pieces. Little Sissy, who was fighting the devil, suddenly stopped and looked at the golden light with some curiosity. The golden light passed through the two-headed dog's body without stopping, and then rushed towards the Lord of the Abyss next to it. However, just now, it was able to crush the weaker two-headed dog directly, but for the Hellfire whose whole body was burning with Hellfire, this attack was really useless to him. The golden light revealed a figure, and the person who came was Captain Marvel, Carol Lawrence, and her fist was right on the chest of the Hellfire. As for why Carol appeared here, it was because this planet was one of the several planets she protected. If she hadn't been late because of something, she might have been swallowed alive by the huge tentacle monster. At this moment, the Hellfire spread directly from her hand to her entire body. Carol was horrified. She was so powerful that she couldn't deal with this big guy. What kind of fire was on this big guy? It could even spread to her body. Carol's mind flashed, and then she retreated a distance, looking at the green flame that had spread to her shoulder. Carol was a little flustered. Although her arm didn't feel any pain yet, it was because the power in her body was fighting against the flame. Not far away, little Sissy recognized the golden figure and flew towards Carol. When she arrived next to Carol, a golden light shield enveloped the two of them. Little Sissy pulled up her visor, tilted her head, and looked at Carol and said, "Aunt Carol, why are you here?" "Little Sissy, it's you. Why are you here?" Carol was a little horrified when she saw little Sissy, and then she pulled little Sissy behind her and looked at the demons who were rushing towards this side with caution. "Aunt Carol, your arm." Little Sissy pointed at Carol's arm that was burning with flames and said with wide eyes. Carol first looked down at her arm, then pretended to be calm and said, "I'm fine, little Sissy. Aunt Carol will take you away from here later, don't worry." Although Carol had noticed the battle over there, she just glanced at it casually and started her own battle directly, so she hadn't seen how little Sissy slaughtered these demons. In the battle with Thanos, little Sissy was not Thanos' opponent, so in her opinion, little Sissy's power would not be very strong. At most it was the effect of her armor. Seeing that Carol didn't care about the flames, little Sissy was a little worried and searched for the magic her father taught her in her mind. At this time, the demons had approached Carol and the others. The winged dreadlord flapped its wings behind it and approached Carol rapidly. Its sharp claws shone with light, and then it swung at Carol. Because little Sissy was behind her, Carol could only resist the energy that the dreadlord was attacking her. A golden light flashed on Carol's left hand, and then a golden energy hit the energy. However, the golden energy had no effect at all, and it passed through the energy directly and flew into space. The green light fell directly on Carol. Suddenly, Carol felt tired. Her head was a little fuzzy, and she was about to fall asleep. Carol knew in her heart that it was not good. If she really fell asleep, she and little Sissy would probably be killed here. Carol, who reacted, immediately began to struggle, trying to get rid of the power that the dreadlord exerted on her. If she had more time, maybe she could get rid of that power, but now the time was too short, because those demons were about to approach them. At this moment, purification. The moment the voice fell, a lightning suddenly fell on Carol. Suddenly, Carol felt her spirits shaken, and the drowsy feeling disappeared without a trace. She also felt that the flames on her arms had disappeared. Without those flames, Carol could directly mobilize all the power in her body. Carol looked at the Dread Demon King who had appeared in front of her. She clenched her right fist and then hit the Dread Demon King with a solid circle. The powerful force directly blasted the Dread Demon King dozens of meters away. Golden energy appeared on her body. Carol turned around and said to little Sissy. Then her figure faced the demons. Carol knew that it was little Sissy who saved her just now, but now was not the time to say these things. In her heart, if she didn't get rid of those demons, the two of them would be in danger. Carol fought with those demons. They appeared one after another and then went silent again. Although Carol was very strong, she still couldn't handle so many terrifying demons. It was just a moment. Carol was forced by many demons to flee constantly and couldn't fight back at all. There were also several times when she was almost torn apart by those demons. Especially those few fear demons. Their strength was not very strong, but they were extremely cunning. From time to time, they would find a gap for her to attack. Carol was exhausted from dealing with it. She had some wounds on her body, and the battle suit that was tightly attached to her body was also a little broken. The tentacle monster hadn't been sold yet. If the tentacle monster attacked, Carol might not be so lucky to just be injured. It is estimated that she would be swallowed by the tentacle monster directly. Not even a hair would be left. On the side, the little guy looked at the increasing number of wounds on Carol's body, blinked his big eyes, and then the battle axe in his hand disappeared, and what appeared in her hand was the blue staff. The little guy held the staff in his hand and waved it gently at Carol. Then, a golden light appeared and shot towards Carol. After the golden light stayed on Carol for a moment, it shot out again and shot towards the spaceship. The moment the golden light disappeared, Carol felt that all the wounds on her body had healed and her physical strength was restored again. Carol stopped, lowered her head to look at the original wounds on her body for a moment, then clenched her fists, turned around and looked at the demons who were rushing towards her again. Carol curved her mouth and smiled, and then her figure disappeared from the spot. And on the top of the spaceship, an illusory figure was standing there. Chapter 309. This idea seems to work. In the universe, Mei Gan stood on the spaceship, holding a blue staff, and watching the battle below. He has been here for a while. Ever since the little guy used the battle axe, Mei Gan knew it at the first time, and hurried here from Asgard. He thought something big had happened on the Earth again, or that President S.H.I.E.L.D had come. It was not until he came here following the figure of little Sissy that he realized that it was these mist demons again. Mei Gan still felt a little regretful. He really wanted to see President S.H.I.E.L.D. Watching the battle below, Mei Gan was a little surprised that the little guy actually played the role of an assistant. From time to time, he threw a holy light or purification to Carol, which meant that he did not teach her to cast the halo, otherwise she might have even opened the halo. Thinking about going back and taking the time to give the halo to the little guy, Mei Gan just stood quietly on the top of the spaceship, watching the battle below. And below, seeing that Carol was suppressed again, little Sissy quickly waved the staff in her hand, and then a ray of light fell on Carol. Then, the light gathered and turned into a shield flashing with thunder. The shield just surrounded Carol. It provided defense for Carol. Carol looked at the rotating thunder shield around her with some curiosity. Then she turned around and glanced at little Sissy behind her. Knowing that it was time to talk, she turned around and rushed straight towards the demons. Carol's figure appeared next to an Abyss Lord, and her powerful fist directly knocked the Abyss Lord over with one punch. Then, her figure chased after him and came to the side of the Abyss Lord. The golden light on her hand shone, and she punched the Abyss Lord again. The terrifying power directly blasted the Abyss Lord into pieces with one punch. At this moment, Carol's fist had not been retracted yet, and a figure came to her side. The sharp claws fell fiercely on Carol. It was the cunning Dreadlord. He had been waiting for the opportunity, and now was the opportunity he had been waiting for. He used all his strength to grab Carol. However, the sharp claws were blocked by a shield shining with thunder, and could not go in any further. Moreover, the Dreadlord suddenly twitched, which was clearly the appearance of being electrocuted by thunder. His claws were already charred, and his ugly face showed a painful expression. This thunder shield not only had amazing defense power, but it could also fight back. Carol was also surprised. She thought she would at least suffer some minor injuries, but who knew that she was unscathed and even injured this cunning guy. It really made her happy. These cunning demons had been taking the opportunity to sneak attack from the side, making her defenseless. Now with this thunder shield, she is no longer afraid of those guys, and can just rush over. After thinking, Carol's figure shone with golden light, and then rushed towards the demons. Not far away, the tentacle monster just floated there quietly. If it weren't for the shaking tentacles, everyone would think it was just a huge corpse. And at this moment, perhaps Carol killed too many demons and completely alarmed it, and two tentacles rushed towards Carol like cannonballs. The hooks on the tentacles glowed coldly. It was daunting. Carol had already seen the two huge tentacles. Carol directly abandoned a demon not far ahead, and flew directly into the sky. Then, Carol spread her hands, and she gathered the power in her body between her hands, and the power shone with colorful light in her hands. Carol suddenly pushed the power in her hands towards the two tentacles. Bang, the two collided, and the huge power exploded directly on the spot, and a huge sound emerged in this originally silent space. People can hear it clearly. After the explosion, shockwaves surged out from the center and rushed in all directions. They directly overturned the demons not far away. Carol's figure moved suddenly, passing through the shockwaves and rushing towards the tentacle monster. She wanted to deal with the tentacle monster first, while the thunder shield was still there. And at this moment, several chubby blue ugly ghost mothers were swaying towards the direction of little Sissy. They showed a mouth full of sharp teeth and an ugly evil smile. The small eyes like green beans were emitting green light. They stared at little Sissy. Little Sissy standing there shuddered immediately. The little guy swallowed his saliva, and from time to time he was afraid that those guys looked too disgusting. The little guy was stared at by these guys, and he always felt scared. He wanted to teleport away directly. Fortunately, she looked at Carol who was rushing towards the tentacle monster and the shaking spaceship, so she resisted the idea. In order not to touch these guys, the little guy shone brightly with the staff in his hand. Then, the little guy whispered, "Frost Nova." As soon as the voice fell, white light suddenly appeared on the bodies of the ghost mothers. Then, they were suddenly wrapped in huge ice blocks. White cold air was emanating from the ice blocks, and it was still clearly visible even in this space. Forked lightning. The little guy shouted again. She pointed the staff in her hand towards the ghost mothers who had been frozen by the ice. The staff suddenly shone with purple light, and purple lightning shot towards the ghost mothers. The lightning streaked through the dark space, illuminating the entire area as bright as day. In an instant, the lightning hit the ghost mother. Their frozen bodies suddenly exploded, and fragments shot out in all directions. Little Sissy looked at the fragments of the evil habits, and swept the staff in her hand. Then a thunder shield appeared, blocking the fragments in the distance. After all, she was a child who loved hygiene. It was better to stay away from these disgusting and dirty things. If her armor was dirty, she would have to ask her godfather to make another one for her. Hey, this idea seems to work. I'm tired of this armor on my body. Can I change it? It's better to change it to a better looking one. I'll go back and talk to my godfather, and he will definitely agree. Little Sissy suddenly thought of this, just as the little girl was thinking about how to get Tony to change her armor. In the distance, Carol was being tightly tied up by two tentacles stretched out by the monster. Even if she used all her strength, she still couldn't break free from the two tentacles on her body. I had originally thought of dealing with this huge guy first, but who knew that this guy was so powerful that it only took a moment for me to be tied up by this demon. Was I too weak, or was this disgusting demon too powerful? Carol thought in disbelief. Chapter 310 Lightning Storm. In the universe, Mei Gan looked at Carol who was tied up, and shook his head. I thought this guy could hold on for a little longer, but he was taken down in just a few breaths. Aunt Marvel is too weak. She is really weak. On the other side, little Sissy, who had just dealt with those ghost mothers, shook her head speechlessly after seeing Carol's embarrassment. Why does it feel that Aunt Carol is so weak? The black-balled uncle also said that this aunt is the strongest among the godfathers. He must be bragging. The staff in his hand suddenly burst into an ice blue light. Ice bomb. A piece of ice blue ice fragment shot towards the tentacle monster. The ice blue fragment crossed the space and accurately landed on the tentacle monster. Suddenly, the tentacle that was pulling Kalaoa stopped there. The tentacle monster's body was dizzy and could not move at all. Shockwave at this time, the staff in the little guy's hand lit up again, and the golden light shone, and then a golden shockwave bombarded the tentacles that bound Carol. The shockwave fell directly on the two tentacles. After a moment of stalemate, the two tentacles were directly broken into two pieces. Carol was able to escape. She stepped back a distance, frowning, facing this terrifying tentacle monster. She didn't know how to start. Just after Carol stopped, the tentacle monster woke up from the dizziness. The attack just now made the tentacle monster angry, and the tentacles outside the body were swinging wildly, and then those tentacles entangled towards the figure of little Sissy. But little Sissy's attack was faster than it. When Carol stepped back, she waved the staff in her hand and pointed in the direction of the tentacle monster. Purple light bloomed. Lightning storm. The little guy's voice came, and suddenly, layers of dark clouds appeared strangely above the tentacle monster, right in this space. A roar sounded in the dark clouds, and then purple lightning flashed in the dark clouds. Then, purple lightning suddenly struck the tentacle monster. Lightning Storm, a skill of the 6th level wild monster Storm Ripper Warlock. That is, the wild monster that looks like golden in the battle. This wild monster is a bit ugly, but this skill is still very useful. However, Mei Gan has never used it once. The little guy used it first. The name sounds very powerful. When learning, the little guy liked this skill at first sight. It was like a lightning as thick as a child's arm, which struck directly on the tentacle monster. The big mouth full of sharp teeth on the tentacle monster's face suddenly opened, and the tentacles suddenly swung up and supported his head. He wanted to block all the lightning above. In fact, it did block it. The terrifying lightning storm did hurt the tentacle monster, but it only blew off a dozen tentacles, and its body was not damaged at all. After all, it has hundreds of tentacles. A dozen tentacles are just a drop in the bucket for this tentacle monster. Moreover, the magic power of little sissy is not strong enough. If it were a few years later, it would probably be able to directly blow the tentacle monster into pieces, but it is still a little weak now. It is a little weak for the tentacle monster, but it is quite terrifying for other demons. Seeing that his lightning storm has no use for this ugly demon, the little guy put away the lightning that was still falling. The lightning disappeared directly, and the dark clouds disappeared along with it. The little guy pointed the staff in his hand in the direction of the demons who were trying to surround Carol. Suddenly, the disappeared dark clouds appeared again, and this time they appeared above the heads of the group of demons. The little guy's idea is very simple. Since he can't hurt you, then he will deal with your subordinates first, and then deal with you slowly. The demons looked at the lightning flashing above their heads with fear. They looked at each other, and then rushed to flee in all directions. The demons wished they had more legs, so that they could escape from this lightning area. Especially those demons without legs. They cursed in their hearts. They swore in their hearts that, if they could escape this time, they would definitely find a few legs to install. For example, the ghost mother and the eye demons. However, it was useless for them to have more legs, as they could not be faster than the speed of lightning. The purple lightning fell instantly, and struck the demons. Not long after, the demons were struck into charcoal by the lightning. The demons were extremely terrified, and it only took a blink of an eye. The demons below were caught by the lightning, and no one escaped. Not far away, when the dark clouds gathered, the tentacle monster stretched out its tentacles towards the heads of many demons, trying to save them. However, the speed of its tentacles was still slow. After the demons turned into charcoal and became silent, its tentacles barely extended halfway. Sensing the demise of many demons, the tentacle monster suddenly became extremely angry. A shrill hissing sound rang out in the space, clearly reaching everyone's ears. After hearing it, everyone felt uncomfortable at first, and then, they felt uncomfortable in their chests, as if someone was holding their hearts tightly and trying to crush them. Except for Mei Gan, who was standing on the spaceship. Even little Sissy frowned tightly, not to mention Carol in front. Seeing this, Mei Gan waved the staff in his hand forward. Invisible magic power fell towards everyone. Suddenly, everyone felt refreshed, and everyone felt that the uncomfortable feeling had disappeared. Seeing that their attacks were no longer useful to them, the tentacle monster's huge mouth suddenly opened, and those sharp teeth shone with cold light, embedded next to the big mouth. Suddenly, a huge suction force came out from the big mouth. Meteorites floating around fell into the giant mouth of the tentacle monster. The giant mouth closed from time to time, and the meteorites that fell beside the giant mouth were crushed by the sharp teeth. Carol, who was standing in the front, only felt a suction force coming. Her figure was already unstable, and her body rushed towards the giant mouth involuntarily. The spaceship was shaking directly, and began to shake. It was moving towards the giant mouth little by little. However, at this moment, Mei Gan stepped lightly on the spaceship with his right foot. The shaking stopped directly. Quill and others who were just thinking about falling down from the back immediately fell to the side. Fortunately, little Nora was held in Gamora's arms, otherwise the little girl might be injured. Quill and others looked around with some confusion, looking at Carol and the rubble that was still heading towards the giant mouth. Why didn't their spaceship feel the suction force? but little Sissy was not pulled over by the suction force because of Mei Gan's care. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 311 Tornado. DC Universe. In space, a huge fleet is rushing towards DC Earth. In one of the fleets, in the control room, a green-skinned bald weirdo is standing in front of the glass, looking at the dim space ahead. On a blue light screen hanging above, there is a red bright spot flashing, and a blue arrow is approaching the red spot quickly. The green-skinned bald weirdo stretched out his right hand and gently tapped the red spot, then said to himself, "Are the survivors of Krypton here? I don't know what's there. Maybe I can get a few more pieces from my collection." The voice became smaller and smaller, and then returned to calm. The weirdo closed his eyes silently, and then stopped making any sound. The huge fleet went towards the direction of the Earth. Just like Marvel Earth, DC Earth is always suffering. The people on DC Earth have no idea that danger is approaching. In the Marvel Universe, Carol is struggling desperately, trying to break free from the huge suction. However, no matter how she struggled, it was useless. The huge suction force still made her figure approach the giant mouth of the tentacle monster. Carol's calm face finally showed a little panic. At this moment, Mei Gan's figure suddenly appeared on the top of the spaceship. He waved the blue staff in his hand towards Carol. Suddenly, a golden rope shot towards Carol. When the golden rope came in front of Carol, the front of the rope suddenly spread forward and turned into a golden net, directly covering Carol's body. The golden net fell towards Carol, tightly tied Carol. Carol's face suddenly changed. Looking at the golden net that suddenly tied her up, her heart became even more panicked. She looked up at the place where the golden net came from, but before she could see clearly, her body was carried forward by the golden net. The golden net was very fast. In the blink of an eye, it had arrived beside Mei Gan. He waved his staff, and the golden net turned into energy and dissipated in the air. Carol breathed a sigh of relief when the golden net disappeared. When she looked up and saw Mei Gan, she suddenly collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. She had just wasted a lot of energy fighting against the suction of the tentacle monster. "Mei, you are finally here." After Carol calmed down a little, she stood up and looked at Mei Gan and said, "I've been here for a long time. Otherwise, do you think the sound attack just now would just disappear like this?" Mei Gan turned to look at the little sissy who was sneaking below and trying to escape, and then said, "Little guy, where do you want to sneak to? Why, you want to run away when you see me?" Little sissy, who was about to escape, heard the words and immediately stopped, then turned to Mei Gan and said with a smile, "Hey, that, didn't I see you? Humph. You are so powerful, you actually threatened Quill and others secretly and asked them to take you to the universe to play. What if something goes wrong?" Mei Gan gently pulled the staff in his hand and directly pulled the little guy in front of him. No matter how the little guy struggled there, how could it go wrong? "I'm very powerful. Look, I also treated Aunt Carol." The little guy raised his head and shouted proudly, "Humph, look at what you did to Quill and others." Mei Gan pointed at Quill and others under the spaceship and said angrily, that, I don't know why it happened." The little guy looked down at Quill and others who had just been accidentally scratched and couldn't help shrinking his head with an embarrassed look on his face. "It's okay, Mei, don't blame little sissy. It's none of her business," Gamora said quickly, fearing that Mei Gan would punish little sissy, and Quill and others beside him nodded. "Don't speak for her. If you don't punish her, she will dare to run to another universe and mess around next time." Mei Gan glared at the little guy and then said angrily. Mei Gan was not willing to punish little sissy. This was just to scare her. "Dad, don't I know I was wrong?" The little guy saw Gamora and others speaking for him and hurriedly grabbed his big hand and shook it and said, "Humph, I'll let you go this time. Next time you mess around, I'll see if I don't seal your magic power." Mei Gan was waiting for this step. Seeing that Mei Gan was no longer angry, little sissy nodded her head quickly, saying that there would never be a next time. She was afraid that Mei Gan would really seal the magic power in her body, and then she would not be able to be a superhero. Although there was still the armor given by the Godfather, it was too fragile and would be torn apart in a few strokes, just like the purple sweet potato. It was still the magic power in her body that was powerful. Mei Gan glared at the little guy again, and then turned to look at the tentacle monster that was approaching them. Hundreds of tentacles were rushing towards Mei Gan and others. Everyone's face was already very calm. With Mei Gan there was no panic. Mei Gan glanced at the tentacles that were being pulled towards them. He waved the staff in his hand gently. A green light appeared on the staff. Then, everyone felt the slightly swaying clothes. How could there be wind in space? Everyone wondered. Then they saw it. Under the tentacle monster, a terrifying tornado suddenly appeared. The tornado directly rolled up the tentacle monster, and wind blades were slashing at the tentacle monster's body. In just a moment, the terrifying tentacle monster was cut into small pieces by the tornado. When the pieces fell outside the tornado, they instantly turned into ice. Everyone stared at the terrifying tornado with wide eyes. The tentacle monster that just tied up Carol, the Captain Marvel, with a few tentacles was directly chopped into pieces by Mei's tornado. It was really amazing. I can't imagine it. Mei Gan's face was extremely calm. He turned his head to look at Carol and said, "Do you want to go back to Earth?" "No, now that you are on Earth, I won't go back," Carol said to Mei Gan. Mei Gan nodded when he heard that. Then he looked down at Quill and the others in the spaceship and asked, "What about you guys?" Quill and the others turned their heads and looked at each other, and then Gamora said to Mei Gan, "Let's go to that moon with you. Our spaceship is broken and we have to go there to repair it." "Okay." Mei Gan nodded, then turned to look at Carol and said again, "Then, see you next time. Carol, we'll go back first." "Okay, goodbye, little sissy. See you next time." Carol nodded to Mei Gan, then lowered her head and touched little sissy's head and said. Little sissy nodded her little head when she heard that. "Goodbye, Aunt Carol." Seeing that he had already said hello, Mei Gan waved the staff in his hand, and a blue light emerged. A white light flashed. Except for Carol, everyone disappeared on the spot. Chapter 312 Isn't Khan's partner Aunt Mei? Marvel Universe. Planet Azeroth. In the base of the Night Elves. Mei Gan and others suddenly appeared next to the Elder Altar. Not far from the Elder Altar, Tyrande was standing there with Maiev and others, watching Mei Gan and others arrive. Looking at Tyrande not far away, the little guy shrank his neck a little embarrassedly. After all, they just lied to Tyrande, so they ran away from here. Tyrande was not angry, but smiled and glanced at the two little guys, walked in front of the two little guys, touched their little heads, and said softly, "Do you dare to sneak out again?" "Don't dare." The two little guys shook their heads and shouted. "Remember, don't sneak out again next time," Tyrande said again with a smile. The two nodded fiercely. Mei Gan led Quill and others outside, and then said to them, "Go directly to that house later. It's for you to use, but remember to pay the rent." Quill and others heard the words, and immediately nodded happily. This is equivalent to having a home here. For these interstellar adventurers, having a home is such a luxury. Now they can have a home on such a planet. This kind of thing was unimaginable before. "Thank you, Mei." Quill, Gamora and others said to Mei Gan solemnly. "You're welcome. Anyway, this planet is also the body of Quill's father." Mei Gan waved his hand and said indifferently. Quill scratched his head speechlessly. "Although this is the truth, why does this make people feel wrong? If it weren't for your strong strength, I would have shot you a long time ago." He just thought about it and didn't dare to say it out loud. Being cowardly is also a kind of attitude towards life. Mei Gan didn't know Quill's thoughts. If he knew, let alone a home, he would probably throw this guy to dust. Mei Gan led everyone to the house, built by Quill's father. It was not long before the house was occupied by vines. The cracks in the house were full of vines and weeds. It would take some effort to decorate it, but Quill and the others didn't care about these things. Instead, they looked around excitedly again. Mei Gan waved his hand and put their spaceship next to the house, and then turned to leave. At this time, "Mei, thank you." Quill and Gamora held hands and came to the door and said solemnly to Mei Gan again, "You're welcome." Mei Gan waved his hand and then disappeared with the two little guys. Looking at Mei Gan and the others disappearing in front of them, Quill and Gamora looked at each other, and then Quill said, "This will be our home from now on, Gamora, of course." Gamora's eyes flashed. "I have already imagined the scene of our children playing here," Quill said again. Bang, ouch. Did I say something wrong? Quill covered his stomach and said in pain, "When did I say that I wanted to have a child with you, Quill? Don't be so narcissistic." Gamora's eyes flashed with joy, but there was no expression on her face, and she turned and ran inside. "Hey, don't run." Quill hurriedly chased after Gamora. Earth. Kalimda Street. Mei Gan appeared next to the turret with the two little guys. Uncle Long and Uncle Kyan were sitting at the table next to them, playing chess. When he saw Mei Gan and the two little guys appear, Uncle Long immediately stood up, walked to Nora, picked Nora up, looked at Mei Gan with a smile and said, "You're back." The two little guys sneaked to Azeroth again. "It's worse than this." The two little guys ran to play in space. Mei Gan glared at the two little guys again and said to Uncle Long, "No way, Nora, how could you sneak into space? What if something happens?" Uncle Long looked at Nora in his arms with some worry. Then he turned his head to look at Mei Gan and said again, "I'll take her back first and teach this little guy a lesson. How can she be so naughty?" After saying that, he turned around and walked away quickly without waiting for Mei Gan's response. "Ah, this kid has learned to run away." He ran away when he was about to lose. He has no chess manners. Uncle Kyan heard Uncle Long's footsteps going away and shouted angrily. Mei Gan was a little confused when he heard this. Uncle Long would actually use this trick. He must have learned bad things. It was probably Norman who brought him here. He just likes to run away when he can't win in chess. Mei Gan shook his head and didn't say anything. He took the kid to the flower shop. Don't think that Uncle Kyan doesn't know anything just because he can't see him, although he is indeed blind. "Hey, this brat just ran away like this without even paying attention to me, an old man." Sensing Mei Gan's departure, Uncle Kyan muttered a little dissatisfied. After Uncle Kyan finished speaking, he packed up the chessboard and walked towards the physical therapy center. Just at this time, Jessica came back from outside. She was holding a handbag in her hand. She looked very happy. She probably completed a big order. The handbag was bulging, and it seemed to be full of US dollars. "Kyan, I'm back. I just completed that big order. Look, this handbag is full of green dollars." The moment Jessica saw Uncle Kyan, her eyes lit up. She ran to Uncle Kyan's side, stretched out her hand to hug Uncle Kyan's arm and said, "That's great. Let's go. Let's go back to eat." Uncle Kyan gave Jessica a thumbs up. Hearing Uncle Kyan's praise, Jessica felt very happy. She hugged Uncle Kyan's arm and walked towards the physical therapy center. At the same time, Aunt Mary walked out of the physical therapy center. She walked up to hug Uncle Kyan's other arm and walked into the physical therapy center with the two of them with a smile. And not far away, Lucifer was staring at the three people's disappearing backs with wide eyes and murmured in disbelief, "That's Kyan. So who is the other girl? Isn't Kyan's partner Aunt May? You don't know this. Uncle Master is the love saint of Arkalimda. He has two partners, Aunt May and Jessica, but he has several other confidants outside. This is something that the whole Kalimda knows." At this time, Kato, who was passing by, heard the words and stopped immediately and explained to Lucifer in a low voice, "Wait here, so, Kyan is the son of luck often mentioned in novels." Lucifer looked at the empty physical therapy center in surprise. Suddenly, he felt that it was a wrong choice for him to go to Tony to learn from him. It seems that he has to build a good relationship with Kyan. If he learns 2 or 3 tricks from him, Tyrant will not be able to escape from his palm. Touching the beard on his chin, Lucifer thought secretly in his heart, "Wow, I didn't expect Mr. Lucifer to read Chinese novels too." Kato's eyes lit up when he heard this, and he came to Lucifer's side and said, "That's right, I've been fascinated by the novels on your Chinese website recently. I have to say that many novels are very exciting. I forgot to eat several times while reading them." Lucifer gave Kato a thumbs up and said, the two of them seemed to have met a bosom friend, and they quickly sat down on a chair beside them and started chatting. Chapter 313 Planet Harvester. 3 days later. DC Universe. Outside the Earth, a fleet was slowly approaching the Earth. When the fleet came to the edge of the moon, their presence was known to the officials on DC Earth. At the same time, in the Wayne group on DC Earth, Bruce Wayne had also received news of the alien fleet. Once again, the members of the Justice League gathered in the Batcave. Bruce Wayne's butler, Alfred, was opening the screen on the wall for everyone. The screen opened. A space scene appeared in front of several people, and in space, a fleet was slowly approaching the Earth, and the fleet was estimated to have dozens of spaceships. In front of the hideous and huge spaceship, some gun barrels that looked like weapons were turning unconsciously. So, this time our enemy is these alien fleets. Aquaman held a hamburger in his hand, eating while talking to the huge fleet on the screen. Aren't you worried? Arthur, you look very relaxed. Barry bumped Aquaman Arthur's arm with his elbow and said jokingly, "Hey, man, we have a backer behind us. If we can't handle it, we can ask Mei for help." Aquaman Arthur looked very impressive, because he had a backer. "Man, you have offended the goddess of death. Are you sure Mei will come to rescue you?" Barry's words immediately made Aquaman Arthur's expression wilted. Thinking of that incident, he was a little scared, so he didn't dare to hook up with girls recently. He had to stay in the tavern by the sea and drink to live, which was really tragic. Don't always think about others' help, Arthur. We are not weak, and we still have Clark, Batman Wayne said to Arthur. He has always been against Mei Gan and others coming to their universe. After all, they are too powerful. Even the most powerful Clark here is not his opponent. He has always been on guard against Mei Gan in his heart. He always feels that Mei Gan and others have some intentions for their universe. Therefore, Mei Gan always felt that Bruce Wayne was somewhat similar to Egghead. They were both suspicious, wary of everyone they didn't know, and distrustful of everyone. However, when they needed any fighting power, they would change their expressions. They should form a pair. Maybe. Let's see first. If we can handle it ourselves, we don't need to ask for their help. If we really can't handle it, then, Barry. Diana interrupted, and finally she turned to look at Barry. I know what to do. Barry nodded to everyone. Then, several people began to discuss countermeasures against the fleet. Outside the Earth, the fleet was approaching the atmosphere. In a monster spaceship of the fleet, Brainiac was still standing in front of the cockpit. A pair of eyes showed surprise. The planet below looked really beautiful. Perhaps, he could add a few more collections to his collection room. As a collector, he wanted to make specimens of any beautiful things and put them in his collection room. Brainiac reached out and touched his bald head and began to look for the city that could be collected. Perhaps, every city can be put into a bottle and collected. Slowly appreciate it later. As a machine intelligence, it is surprising that Brainiac has such a hobby. He only has this one hobby. Brainiac stretched out his hand and waved forward, and suddenly, those spaceships accelerated again and approached the Earth. At this time, a blue figure suddenly appeared in front of the fleet, and Superman Clark stood in front of the fleet alone. Clark just floated quietly in front, staring at the fleet with a pair of eyes. In the monster spaceship, Brainiac's eyes also looked at Clark, who was blocking the front, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, which was a little creepy. The last Kryptonian. I didn't expect to see him so soon. It's really a surprise. Brainiac looked at Clark in front of him and said to himself in surprise, "Outsiders, the Earth does not welcome you. I hope you can go back to where you came from." Clark's figure suddenly floated forward for a moment, and he spoke to the monster spaceship in the middle. "Kryptonian, have you betrayed your race? It's really surprising that you are protecting another planet." Brainiac's voice came from the monster spaceship. "Who are you? How do you know my origins?" Clark heard this, and a puzzled look appeared on his face, and his brows were deeply furrowed. "Who am I? My name is Brainiac. You can also call me Planet Harvester." Brainiac's green face showed a proud look, and then he spoke. Before Clark could reply, he said again, "Oh, by the way, your home planet, Krypton, was destroyed by me, and some cities on Krypton are still in my collection room. They are so beautiful. The cities on this beautiful planet will eventually become my collection. The last Kryptonian, you'd better surrender obediently." Brainiac's voice was not loud, but it was incomparably rampant. Clark was already furious. His fists were clenched tightly, making crackling sounds. It seemed that he would attack those fleets at any time. Just when the war was about to start here, next to the block turret of the Marvel Universe, Coulson was leading Natasha and several other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents towards the space crack. Godmother, where are you going? Little Sissy, who was sitting on Adam's back, looked at Natasha and asked with some confusion. We are going to the opposite side. What's wrong? Little Sissy. Natasha stopped and asked with some confusion. I'm so bored here. No one is playing with me. Sister Nora went to her grandmother's place. I'm the only one playing. Can I go with you? The little guy looked at Natasha expectantly and said, "This?" Natasha was stunned when she heard the words, then turned to look at Coulson. After all, Coulson was still talking to Nick. If she went alone, she wouldn't hesitate and just take little Sissy with her. Anyway, the mission this time is just to investigate the environment over there, and there is no danger. Coulson seemed to have heard what Nick said and turned to nod at Natasha. Well, little Sissy, you can go with us. Seeing that Nick agreed, Natasha smiled and nodded to little Sissy. Yeah. Godmother is the best. Little Sissy heard Natasha agreed and quickly jumped off Adam's body, then happily threw herself into Natasha's arms and said, "Now you know that your godmother is good, you ungrateful bastard. You used to only be good to your godfather Tony." Natasha touched the little girl's head and said to her. Then, without waiting for the little girl to reply, she turned around and dragged the little girl into the space crack. Chapter 314 Arrival. DC Universe. Earth. Brainiac's fleet did not slow down because of Clark's obstruction, but crushed Clark. The fleet rushed towards Clark at a high speed, and at the same time, the muzzles of the fleet turned towards Clark. Seeing the spaceship that was about to hit him, and the energy muzzle that was already charging, Clark's face was extremely calm, and red light flashed in his eyes. Then, Clark's heat vision swept across the fleet. At the same time, those missiles that had been charged finally started. White energy collided with Clark's heat vision. Boom boom, the energy exploded in the air. An invisible shockwave spread in all directions. The red cape behind Clark was blown and swayed behind him. Seeing that his attack was offset, there was still no change in front of Clark. Bang, he stomped on the ground, the air exploded, and Clark's figure rushed towards the fleet. It was just a moment. Several spaceships in front of him caught fire, and then the explosions resounded through the sky. Clark smashed the spaceship in half. Inside the monster spaceship, Brainiac completely ignored the destroyed spaceships, and just looked at Clark, who was destroying his spaceships. And he didn't feel bad about the destruction of the spaceships at all. After all, as long as he wanted, he could build countless such spaceships on this planet. These few spaceships were not as valuable as the specimens he wanted. As long as the monster spaceship he was riding was not destroyed, there would be no loss for him. On the ground, Diana and others were standing on the roof of a tall building, looking at the battle that had already taken place there with some confusion. Why did they fight? I'll go up and take a look, Cyborg said to the people beside him, and then he soared into the sky and flew towards Clark's direction. Cyborg's speed was very fast. Not long after, he came to the periphery of the battlefield where the two were fighting. Seeing another super strong man on this planet, and a half robot, Brainiac looked at the newcomer with great interest. This is a strong man who is almost as strong as himself. If he can be controlled, he will have an extra subordinate to command, and he won't have to fight any battles himself. This is a really good idea. Brainiac thought so. At this moment, Clark's blue figure landed beside Cyborg. Clark looked at Cyborg with a serious expression and said, "Victor, go back and tell them that the war has begun." "Nothing to talk about, Clark." Cyborg's expression was also a little serious when he heard it, and he turned to look at Clark and asked, "Nothing to talk about? He just told me that his nickname is Planet Harvester." Clark showed a serious look on his face, looked at Cyborg and replied, "I know." After saying that, Cyborg's figure rushed straight down. Clark felt that he could no longer stop this fleet. At most, he could only destroy a few more spaceships, and the energy weapons of those spaceships have been blocking his attacks. On the ground, boom, Cyborg's figure landed directly beside Diana and the others, and then informed them of the information of the enemy above. After hearing this, several people looked at each other. It seems that this war is inevitable. Then get ready, guys, Bruce Wayne said to everyone. Several people nodded and took out their weapons with serious expressions. Except for the Flash. At the space crack. Coulson and others also walked out of the space crack at this time. Taking a deep breath of the air here, they immediately felt that it was no different from the air on their side. It was full of the same rotten smell. The little guy held Natasha's hand, and his big eyes were looking around, full of curiosity. By the way, the little guy seemed to have only been to the DC universe when the crack just appeared. However, this side of the DC universe was still a ruin. So, this is her first time here, so of course she has to take a good look. She is very curious about this universe. The building at the entrance of the space crack has been built long ago. Walking out of the crack, she saw a huge indoor space at a glance. In the space, some incomprehensible instruments were placed. Not far away, there was a glass door. A man in Wayne Group work clothes was standing there with a weapon in his hand. When he saw Coulson and others coming, he immediately smiled and said to Coulson, "Mr. Coulson, you are here again." It seems that Coulson has come here many times, and even the security guards here are so familiar with him. The security guard opened the glass door. Coulson walked out of the door with Natasha and others. Coulson said to the security guard, "How have you been recently, Zissel?" "Very good, but you haven't been here for a while." Zissel stretched out his fist and bumped it with Coulson. "It's been busy over there recently." Coulson responded with a smile. "Hi, beautiful Ms. Natasha." Zissel then turned his head and looked at Natasha. "Long time no see." Natasha nodded to Zissel. "This cute little friend is yours?" Zissel looked at little Sissy and asked Natasha. It seems that he is guarding the space crack here alone, but he is bored to death, and words keep coming out of his mouth. "My goddaughter, see you later, Zissel, we still have to go to work." Coulson interrupted Zissel, who was about to say something, turned around and waved to several agents, and walked out. Zissel shrugged indifferently. When the few people walked to the door, they saw the spaceship floating in the sky at a glance. It was during this period of time that Brainiac's fleet had already landed over the city. At this time, the huge monster spaceship slowly moved. Tentacles stretched out from the monster spaceship and then fell towards the edge of the city. Brainiac wanted to lift the city directly, shrink it, and make it into another collection in his collection room. In the sky, Superman, Clark and Cyborg were floating in the air. The two used all their strength to attack the monster spaceship. However, everything was useless. Brainiac on the monster spaceship just waved his arms slightly. Swoosh, the bodies of the two were like balls, out of their control, flying away. As the power controlling them disappeared, Clark and Cyborg looked at each other, both showing a difficult look. They didn't expect the enemy in the monster spaceship to be so powerful. They were thrown out without even seeing the enemy's appearance. At the same time, the people who were running around in panic suddenly stopped in place. Fear appeared in their eyes, and their figures were fixed in place. It was like someone cast a spell to freeze them. The consciousness was still there, but they couldn't make any movements. This was the power of Brainiac. He kept the people of this city in their original appearance, and then shrunk the city, and put it in his special glass bottle. For him to appreciate slowly. Chapter 315. Look, little Sissy is scared. DC Universe Earth. Coulson and others were looking at the huge monster spaceship in the sky with panic on their faces. Now, only Coulson and others, Diana and others still have the ability to move. The rest of the people have been fixed in place. Coulson, we have to leave here. Looking at the fleet in the sky, Natasha turned and said to Coulson, "Okay, we'll leave immediately." Coulson turned around without thinking, and walked inside with the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. However, at the same time, on the monster spaceship, Brainiac had a look of surprise on his face, looking at the city being pulled up by the tentacles. He was very satisfied with the city below. Suddenly, Brainiac looked at Coulson and others. He saw the space crack in the building. Brainiac's face was full of ecstasy. There was actually a space crack on this planet that could lead to other worlds. If he could control this crack, then he could travel between the two worlds. That beautiful city and beautiful planet in the other world. Brainiac was a little excited when he thought about it. This is another world. Brainiac thought beautifully and did not forget to let the monster spaceship under his feet extend a tentacle to stop those ant-like existences. He did not want these ants to go back and close the crack. Although this idea is a bit impossible. But who knows if anyone will understand. Even if there is only a 0.01% chance, he will not let these guys get away. The huge tentacle fell directly in front of Carlson and others. Boom. The tentacle fell directly on the building in front of Carlson, destroying the newly built building. Carlson and others were stopped in place, making them unable to return to the other side of the crack. The building collapsed, revealing the space crack flashing with purple thunder light. Next to the space crack, S.H.I.E.L.D, who had just greeted Carlson and others, was looking at the huge tentacle not far ahead with horror. If he hadn't been smart and ran away after hearing the noise outside, he might have turned into meat paste. S.H.I.E.L.D patted his chest and thought with some fear. We can't go back. It seems we have to find Clark and the others, otherwise we will become like them. Natasha pointed to the people standing still like wooden men in front of her and said, I'll listen to you. Carlson nodded. Then, Natasha directly hugged little Sissy in her arms and ran towards the distance with Carlson and others. While running, she took out a mobile phone from a person next to her. As early as last time, Carlson and Natasha and other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents had memorized Clark and others' phone numbers. Carlson ran and made a call. After a few breaths, someone answered the phone from there. Hello, this is Alfred. Clark has gone out for something. If the matter is not important, you can call back later. Bruce Wayne's butler Alfred's voice came from the phone. I'm Carlson. Alfred, you should still remember me. We need to know the location of Clark and the others. We are now on this side of the crack. Carlson said directly to Alfred after Alfred's voice fell. Understood. I'll give you directions now. You'd better find a means of transportation, as the distance is still a bit far. Alfred had seen Carlson and others, and Alfred entertained them several times when they came. A moment later, Carlson and others found a car nearby, and were heading in the direction indicated by Alfred. In the sky, Brainiac did not continue to attack Carlson and others, but just watched them rushing in the direction of Bruce and others. He wanted to catch these guys in one fell swoop, so that he could control which space crack. Moreover, the tentacles of the monster spaceship had stopped there, and did not continue to move. Brainiac was afraid that, if he accidentally destroyed the city and the space crack, he would have to feel distressed for a long time, although he was heartless. Not long after, Carlson brought Natasha and others to a place not far from Diana and others. Diana and others were not surprised by the arrival of Carlson and others, as Alfred had already told them. Even so, after getting out of the car, they were still surprised. They were not surprised by Carlson and Natasha, but by the arrival of little Sissy. As the only daughter of Mei Gan, how could they not know what little Sissy looked like? And last time, when Clark was controlled, little Sissy had a fight with Clark. Little Sissy, why did you follow me? The moment Barry saw little Sissy, he was happy. Little Sissy was here, so how could many be far behind? In his and Arthur's hearts, this war had already been won, so the expressions on their faces were much more relaxed. They didn't show that serious expression. Mei's daughter was here, and if those guys accidentally attacked little Sissy, then their doom would come. Looking at little Sissy who was being held in Diana's arms, Barry and the other two guys showed a wretched smile on their faces. Although they wanted to smile kindly at this time, it was wretched in the eyes of everyone. Little Sissy looked at the expressions on the two people's faces, and her body couldn't help but shrink back a little bit, and then whispered in Diana's ear, "Godmother Diana, do you think those two people have a problem with their brains? They keep staring at me like this." That's right, the little guy recognized Diana as his godmother. Not long ago, when Diana went to the Marvel Universe to hang out. Hearing this, Diana quickly turned her head and looked at Barry and the two people next to her. Looking at their disgusting expressions, she was immediately furious, kicked the two people, and then said coldly, "Why are you two guys looking at little Sissy like this? What are you up to?" Diana said, and didn't forget to hide little Sissy behind her. Ouch. Diana, what are you going to do? We don't have any intentions. We are showing our love for little Sissy. Arthur said, very unconvinced. Still loving Get out of here. Look at how scared little sissy is. Otherwise I will tell Mei, and you will be in trouble. Diana didn't forget to threaten the two people. Suddenly, the expressions on their faces drooped. They were really afraid that Mei Gan would know, and then they would suffer. Just like Arthur, who was taught a lesson by death. Seeing that the two had lowered their heads and dared not look around anymore, Diana gave up. At this time, a hole suddenly opened under the monster spaceship. A green figure walked out of the hole. It was Brainiac. His eyes were fixed on little Sissy in Diana's arms, and greed appeared on his face. Chapter 316 Coulson dies again. DC Universe. Brainiac found a human child that he liked very much. At first sight, he wanted to put this child in his collection room and put it in the most conspicuous place. He had destroyed so many planets and so many civilizations, but he had never seen such a cute child. He, an intelligent robot, could like this child at first sight. What an incredible thing. Brainiac stared at the little Sissy in Diana's arms with his eyes, and he approached little Sissy and others step by step with a smile on his face. He's coming. Bruce Wayne took out 2 grenades and looked at Brainiac in front of him warily. The other people were also wary of him at the same time. But Diana slowly retreated behind everyone with little Sissy in her arms. She stood with ordinary people like Coulson. Diana handed little Sissy in her arms to Coulson and then said to him in a deep voice, "You guys stay away and protect little Sissy. Leave this to us." After that, without waiting for Coulson's answer, she directly drew her long sword and shield from her back and stood with Clark and others. Coulson was a little confused. He looked at Sissy in his arms speechlessly, and then looked at Natasha, who was taking out a gun from behind and preparing to fight. How could he, an ordinary person, protect Sissy? Sissy could only protect him. With his skills, he probably couldn't even withstand a little finger of Sissy. It might hurt his self-esteem to say it out loud, but it was the truth. Coulson smiled bitterly. Although he thought so in his heart, he still held Sissy in his arms and stepped back a little. At this time, Brainiac had come not far from the crowd. He kept looking at Sissy, ignoring others. "Stop, outsider. The Earth does not welcome you. If you leave the Earth now, everything will be fine. Otherwise." Bruce Wayne took a few steps forward, looked at Brainiac warily, and then said to him in a deep voice. After hearing this, Brainiac turned his head and looked at Wayne and others. However, he looked at Wayne and others with such disdain. He looked extremely arrogant. In his heart, these guys in front of him were just some stronger ants. How could they compare to him, a highly intelligent creature? So, Brainiac just glanced at them and ignored them. Suddenly, Brainiac waved his right hand gently. Sure. Coulson, who was holding the little guy, felt his shoulder cut by a sharp knife. The cut was very neat, and his 2 arms slowly slid down. They fell to the ground. Only then did blood flow from the wound on his shoulder. "Ah!" Coulson cried out in pain. Veins on his face emerged, and his eyes looked at the 2 arms that fell to the ground. His expression on his face began to twist because of the pain, and the little Sissy in his arms was floating in the air. Everyone looked at Coulson in shock, and the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents behind him ran to Coulson, supported Coulson, and looked at him with some concern. Coulson Natasha looked at Coulson and couldn't help but shouting with some concern. "Come here. Little cutie." Brainiac waved at little Sissy. Suddenly, little Sissy's figure floated towards Brainiac. Several people's expressions were shocked. Clark quickly floated to little Sissy's side and hugged little Sissy in his arms. Little Sissy must not be tied up, otherwise he would not be able to explain to Mei. Natasha thought so even more. After all, little Sissy was brought here by her. Nothing can happen. Little Sissy shrank in Clark's arms and turned to look at Coulson, who was still enduring the pain. The little guy's face was not very good either. All the pain he was suffering now was because of her. Thinking of this, little Sissy's face was gloomy, and then she broke free from Clark's arms and jumped to the ground. "Little Sissy!" Clark called out in some confusion. The little girl did not answer, and her little hand gently pressed on the watch. Suddenly, the pink armor wrapped her up. Then, she reached behind her and grabbed the huge battle axe. The little girl stared at Brainiac with her eyes. "If you dare to hurt Uncle Coulson, I will chop you up." Brainiac on the other side did not care about the little girl's words. Instead, he looked at little Sissy with interest. It was really surprising that this cute little girl he liked had such a battle armor. And how did she hide such a big battle axe? Space technology. You should know it after you catch this cute little girl. Brainiac thought so, and then he stretched out his hand again and shook his wrist gently. Suddenly, an invisible force passed through Coulson's neck. Puff Coulson only felt that his eyes went black, and then he knew nothing. Coulson, Natasha and others looked at Coulson, who was supported by several agents, with a bad look on their faces. Blood was flowing from his neck, and there was no sound. Coulson was martyred again. What a bad physique he had. Little Sissy turned around and looked even uglier. You killed Uncle Coulson. Unforgivable. The little girl gritted her teeth and said, with flames in her eyes. But she was wearing a mask, so no one could see clearly. Brainiac didn't say anything, just waved at little Sissy. He was about to pull little Sissy to his side. However, this time, he failed. There was a huge force in the little girl's body that resisted his power, and that force was still so strong. Brainiac was a little surprised again. He didn't expect that this little girl had such a strong power. What was the origin of this little girl? Could she be the descendant of that powerful existence in this universe? Brainiac thought with some doubts. However, little Sissy didn't think much about it. She held the battle axe in both hands, and her figure began to flash, rushing towards Brainiac. Little Sissy's figure was very fast. In a few breaths, she had already arrived in front of Brainiac, and the axe blade shining with cold light fell on his head. Brainiac looked calm, just watching the axe coming towards him. At this moment, Brainiac's figure floated backwards. In the blink of an eye, he had left the attack range of the axe. Bang! The axe did not hit Brainiac, but fell directly to the ground, creating a huge hole in the ground. At the same time, Brainiac, who was not far away, waved his right hand forward, and an invisible force wrapped around little Sissy. Suddenly, little Sissy felt something wrapped around her, making her unable to move. The axe in little Sissy's hand swept around her, trying to cut off the invisible energy that bound her, but it was of no use at all. Chapter 317 May God bless him. Marvel Universe. Mei Gan was carrying a fishing rod on his shoulder and was walking towards the park with Tony and Steve. For them, since the time of the Void Lord, they had been very leisurely these days, and today was another leisurely day, so several guys took their equipment and walked towards the lake in the park. Tony had originally suggested going sea fishing, but because Steve had to go on a date with Linda later, he didn't go, but several people planned to go again in a day or two. After all, Linda didn't have to look after the store today, and Steve planned to accompany her. And just at this moment, Mei Gan suddenly felt that the little guy was using the battle axe again. He had a bad premonition. Could something big have happened again? Mei Gan looked up at the blue sky in confusion. The sky was calm, and there were no aliens or enemies. Mei Gan's mental power spread in the direction of little Sissy. Looking at Mei Gan, who stopped, Steve and others were a little confused. Finally, he said that Tony was anxious and asked Mei Gan directly, "Mei, what's wrong? Did something happen again?" After hearing what Tony said, Steve and the others immediately had a bad feeling. Could it be that there was really another superpower incident? Mei Gan turned his head and looked at Tony and then explained to the others, "Something happened, but it was not in our universe, but Clark and his friends next door." "Is it serious?" Steve frowned when he heard this and then asked Mei Gan. "It's quite serious. Coulson has already died heroically." After Mei Gan said this, he wanted to laugh out loud. Coulson is really unlucky. He has died 3 times. Counting this time. The first 2 times were not bad, because it was done by death. This time is really the reason for his bad luck. Otherwise, why did the green guy look for him instead of others? Why did Coulson die again? Is he possessed by the god of bad luck? Tony stared at Mei Gan with wide eyes and said in disbelief, "May God bless him." Johnny made a prayer gesture. "The Lord is useless. Johnny, you have to go and talk to Lady Death. I believe she will bless Coulson's soul," Banner said jokingly while holding Johnny's shoulders. "Banner, you are brave. I think you should go." "I don't want to go to Lady Death." Johnny glanced at Banner beside him, feeling helpless about his bad friend. "Let's go and help. May, Clark has helped us many times. Steve put the fishing tools in his hand on the ground, then opened the long box on his back, took out the long knife inside, and said to Mei Gan, "Steve has been carrying this big knife recently. It was because he heard that there was a terrifying demon coming behind, so he was always ready. I have to go. There is no way little sissy is still there. That dead pervert actually wants to catch my daughter. I have to go and teach him a lesson." At the end of the speech, Mei Gan's eyes were already cold. You know, little sissy is his reverse scale. If you, an alien creature, want to take advantage of her, you have to book a 2 in advance. Fuck, another guy who wants to target little sissy. Let's go now and blast that guy into pieces, Tony said angrily. Banner and others beside him also had some anger on their faces. What's wrong? Everyone looks angry. At this time, Kato was carrying a bag and walked out from the back and asked everyone, "Hey, Kato, someone is bullying little sissy. Do you want to go with us?" Johnny patted Kato's shoulder and asked him, "Of course, how can I be left out when someone bullies little sissy?" Kato put the bag in his hand on the ground, then took out a short stick like a flashlight from his waist, and Kato pressed lightly on the short stick. In an instant, the short stick turned into a long stick. Then let's go. Mei Gan saw that everyone was angry, so he waved his right hand lightly, and the figures of the people disappeared on the spot. At this time, a figure suddenly appeared where they disappeared. Looking at the people who had left, Uncle Khan cursed and said, "You little brat, you ran so fast again, and you didn't take me with you. I don't know who dared to bully a lovely Nanzu. I want to give him a few sticks." Uncle Khan just came out of his house a moment ago. With his hearing, he accidentally heard what Mei Gan and others said, so he ran over here. Who knew that Mei Gan ran so fast? In the DC universe, little sissy was still struggling, but the invisible force was getting tighter around her. Clark and others, who saw something wrong, rushed towards Brainiac. Clark was the fastest, and he appeared in front of Brainiac in the blink of an eye, and his fist had already hit Brainiac. However, Brainiac's right hand was suspended in the air, and then he pressed his index finger gently like playing the piano. Bang! Clark came as fast as he came back. His figure was like a cannonball, hitting the wall not far away. After Clark's figure disappeared, Barry's figure appeared beside Brainiac, and Barry's right leg hit him directly in the chest. Brainiac's face was still calm, and the middle finger of his right hand hung in the air fell down. Bang! Barry's figure fell to the ground suddenly. A big hole was smashed directly on the ground. Then Barry lay in the big hole without moving at all. As Barry collapsed, the attacks of Aquaman, Arthur and Diana attacked Brainiac at the same time. However, the heavier their attacks were, the heavier the damage they suffered. Bang bang. The two figures flew directly in two directions. Sure enough, they are just ants. Only you carbon-based creatures, that Kryptonian, can look at them. Brainiac shook his head at the few people with disdain. At the same time, not far away, little sissy put the battle axe in her hand back behind her back, and then pulled out her blue staff from behind. Exorcism. Little sissy shouted, and then she thrust the staff in her hand into the ground. A golden light appeared above her head, and it kept shining. It disappeared after a few breaths, and little sissy had already broken free from the energy that bound her. "The magic my dad taught me is still very powerful," the little girl muttered to herself, and then looked at Brainiac again. Pulling the staff from the ground, little sissy pointed the staff directly at Brainiac. She shouted again, "Come down, treeman." The staff suddenly appeared with green light, and green light fell rapidly towards the three big trees next to it. Then, everyone saw the amazing scene. Even Brainiac, who had been rampant in the universe for a long time, was full of surprise. As the green light fell, the three big trees suddenly bloomed with green light. The light was not dazzling, but so soft, but everyone still couldn't see the picture inside. After a few breaths, when the light faded, everyone saw a pair of human faces growing on the trunks of the three big trees, and the claws made of branches looked extremely sharp. The tree roots under their feet were like a huge paw, allowing the three tree people to move freely. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. we cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 318. You don't understand how powerful I am. DC Universe. On the battlefield, in the sky, more than a dozen fighter planes from the Earth are surrounding the warships. Countless shells are attacking the warships. The warships on the opposite side are also firing energy shells, shooting down the fighter planes belonging to humans one by one. In front of these spaceships, they look so vulnerable. On the ground, armored vehicles or tanks are rushing over, and anti-aircraft missiles are bombarding the spaceships in the sky. However, although the shells fired at the same time look very spectacular, not many can accurately hit the spaceships, and they are blocked by the energy shells on the spaceships in midair. In the end, only a few shells hit one of the spaceships. The shells exploded suddenly, bursting with countless sparks, rendering the sky fiery red. It was like a brilliant firework, blooming in the air, and the fireworks were clearly visible above the city, blocked by the terrifying monster spaceship. However, when the sparks dispersed, everyone saw clearly that the shells they were so proud of were useless against these spaceships. Now they could only pray that the superheroes could resist this fleet. Otherwise, they could only watch their planet being destroyed by these guys. Therefore, the world's attention was cast on Clark and others. Under the illumination of the surrounding cameras, the battle here was broadcast on television all over the world. Everyone looked at Clark and others expectantly. However, what was presented was a superhero they didn't know, and a child who looked only a few years old. Suddenly, people all over the world were a little confused. Where is the Superman they are familiar with? Where is Batman? And where is the fastest Flash? Why is there only a small figure? However, as the screen switched to the center of the battlefield, 3 huge tree men were slowly surrounding Brainiac. The huge claws, made of branches, were shining with green light. Brainiac was also staring at the 3 huge tree men with some curiosity, and a row of data flashed in his eyes, as if analyzing something. At this time, little Sissy's childish voice sounded again. The staff in his hand was still pointing at Brainiac. Entangle. As soon as little Sissy finished speaking, a vine rushed out from the ground like a giant python, and then tightly wrapped around Brainiac. Brainiac's face was calm, without the slightest panic, but curiously looking at the vines on his body. Although the vines were wrapping around him more and more tightly, for him who had no sense of pain, this little binding had no effect on him. Whoosh! The huge and chaotic sound of wind sounded in his 2 ears. The claws shining with green light were grabbing down towards his head fiercely. Bang! Brainiac's robe on his back moved without wind, making a rustling sound behind him. The vines wrapped around him suddenly broke apart, turning into pieces of debris falling to the ground, and the invisible force formed an invisible light shield to block the claws that were grabbing towards him fiercely in midair. The claws of the 3 huge tree people could not move forward even half a step. In front of the TV, the audience who were originally excited about Brainiac being tied up, now they were disappointed again. Clark and the others were not seen. Now there was only a child who looked only about 10 years old fighting alone, which made them regretful. No. When the screen turned again, they saw Barry lying dead in the pit and Clark who had just rushed out from the other side of the wall. In fact, they had always been there, but they were just smashed away by that powerful guy. Clark and the others would not watch little Sissy deal with Brainiac alone. This was their world. Bang, bang, bang! 3 sounds rang out, and the 3 giant tree men who were deadlocked beside Brainiac were blown away. At the same time, swish, swish, swish! Cyborg, who had not moved, directly activated the cannon on his body, and a series of energy shells bombarded Brainiac. However, Brainiac gently waved his palm. Boom! The energy that was shooting at him turned a corner and hit the buildings not far away, blowing them up. Victor, let's deal with those spaceships first. Leave this to them first. Bruce stopped Cyborg who was about to attack Brainiac again, and pointed to the spaceships that were raging in the sky. Okay. Cyborg looked up at the sky and nodded. Ms. Natasha, take this. If there is an emergency, please notify us. Finally, Bruce handed a headset to Natasha. After Natasha took it, he turned around and walked towards the Batmobile not far away without waiting for her response. Not far away, Aquaman and Diana, who had just been knocked out by Brainiac, had returned and surrounded him with Clark and others. "You are too weak, you'd better surrender." Brainiac looked at the crowd surrounding him and said with a smile on his calm face, "Don't be too arrogant, you ugly green bastard." Before Clark and others could speak, little Sissy standing next to Brainiac shouted in dissatisfaction, "Little girl, you are still young and don't understand how powerful I am, so I will forgive you first." Brainiac was not angry. What's wrong with being confronted by such a cute little girl? Instead, he looked even cuter. "Don't make me laugh to death. I don't understand how powerful you are. I have seen enemies who are several times stronger than you, not to mention my even more powerful father." Humph. The little guy showed a disdainful smile that would never appear on a child's face, and then snorted coldly. Brainiac just thought that the child admired his father and just shook his head without saying anything. He waved his hand gently, and then countless stones floated from the ground, and then countless stones suddenly shot towards Clark and others. Those countless stones were like bullets, attacking Clark and others. Clark looked at the attack of the stones, and red light flashed in his eyes. Then a thermal line of sight swept across the stones. Bang bang bang. As the thermal line of sight swept across, the stones exploded one by one. Clark swept the rocks that were attacking him, but Diana and the others were not so lucky. The rocks were like small bombs that exploded in front of them. The powerful explosion blew Diana and Aquaman away for dozens of meters. As for the little girl, perhaps because of Brainiac's care, only a dozen rocks attacked her. However, the rocks were blocked by a shield covered with water ripples. She was not hurt at all. This was the magic shield from Naga. Chapter 319 Ultimate Magic. DC Universe. On the battlefield, a figure flashed through the air like lightning. Clark's figure rushed down towards Brainiac like a cannonball. Along the way, the air exploded, like a thunder exploding in everyone's ears. Clark rushed directly in front of Brainiac like a flash of lightning, and his fist smashed down on his head. Bang. Brainiac's green palm caught Clark's fist directly. His body was fixed in the air, unable to move forward. Brainiac looked at Clark and said, "Krypton survivor, although you are the most powerful Kryptonian I have ever seen, you are still not my opponent." Brainiac finished speaking, and he picked up Clark and threw him to the ground fiercely. Bang bang bang. Brainiac threw Clark to the ground fiercely several times, making Clark's head a little dizzy. Then, Brainiac smashed Clark directly into a building not far away. Boom. Looking at Clark embedded in the wall, Brainiac shook his hand with some disdain, and then looked in the direction of little Sissy. His eyes were full of love, but this love was morbid. Brainiac once again reached out to little Sissy, wanting to grab little Sissy in front of him. At this moment, the three huge tree men that were blown away came to Brainiac again, and their claws, made of branches, suddenly stretched out, turning into vines and entwining around him. Brainiac stopped what he was doing, looking a little annoyed. The other people who he regarded as ants had been bothering him. Now there were 3 more tree men coming to disturb him and harassing him, making his patience almost exhausted. Brainiac's eyes flashed red, and then a heat line of sight shot out of his eyes, sweeping across the 3 tree men. The high temperature heat line of sight directly burned the 3 tree men in half, turning the 3 tree men into 2 pieces. This is exactly what Brainiac copied Superman's thermal vision, and used Superman's thermal vision to eliminate the 3 tree people. Seeing the tree people he summoned being killed like this, the little guy pouted his mouth angrily and glared at Brainiac with dissatisfaction. Then, the little guy raised the staff in his hand again. The blue staff pointed to the sky. Forked lightning. As soon as the little guy finished speaking, a bright purple light suddenly appeared in front of everyone. Boom. At this moment, a huge thunder suddenly sounded in the sky, and purple lightning flashed in the air. Then, purple lightning struck Brainiac's body. Brainiac looked up at the sky, and the purple lightning struck his head. Bang. After a loud sound, Brainiac's figure was covered by the purple lightning. Looking at the lightning on Brainiac's body, the audience in front of the TV was full of hope again. They could never have thought that this little hero who looked like a child had such a powerful power. This little magician came out from there. Some viewers in front of the TV instantly became fans of little Sissy. However, A moment later, the purple lightning disappeared on Brainiac. Everyone looked over and saw that the guy was still not hurt at all, and his body was incredibly clean. Such a powerful lightning did not hurt this guy. Could it be that their planet was going to be destroyed by this guy? The audience in front of the TV once again felt desperate. The atmosphere of despair spread all over the world. Above the sky, Mei Gan and others who had already appeared were looking at the battlefield below. Mei, let's take action. Little Sissy should not be able to deal with that guy, Tony said to Mei Gan with some concern. Mei Gan, who was about to take action, stopped Tony and others who wanted to attack below after looking at Little Sissy. Wait, let's see what the little guy will do. Tony was about to say something when he heard this, but then he looked at Mei Gan, who was not worried at all, and held back what he was about to say. Below, and Brainiac, who was in the center of the battlefield, had no smile on his face. He was tired and didn't want to delay any longer. Little guy, since you are so ignorant of the current situation, don't blame me for not holding back. After saying that, Brainiac stretched out his hand again, grabbing the little guy. Don't think you are the only one who is so powerful. If you have the ability, take my ultimate magic. After the voice fell, Sissy saw that the guy opposite was unmoved and quickly raised the staff in her hand to the sky. She couldn't help but shout loudly, "Ultimate magic. Summon Aunt Maeve." As the voice fell, a blue light bloomed at the top of the staff. A blue teleportation array appeared in front of Sissy. Brainiac, who was about to reach out to grab Sissy, looked at the blue magic array and was suddenly a little doubtful. The blue teleportation array emerged, and an illusory figure wearing a hood appeared in the teleportation array. The blue light disappeared, and the white light bloomed. The Watcher of the Night Elves, Maeve Shadowsong, appeared in everyone's sight. Maeve Shadowsong suddenly appeared here, a little dazed, then looked around, then turned to look at Little Sissy, and said to Little Sissy with some doubt, "Little Sissy, what's the matter with you calling me here? Aunt Maeve, that ugly guy wants to catch me. He bullies me." Little Sissy pointed at Brainiac and said. Suddenly, Maeve Shadowsong's face turned cold, and she turned to look at the figure that Little Sissy pointed at, with murderous intent flashing in her eyes. Little Sissy is a descendant of their god of creation, and the only descendant. In addition, Little Sissy is so cute, and this guy with the same skin color as an orc dares to bully Little Sissy. Maeve Shadowsong decided to cut this guy into pieces. The silver wheel in her hand began to shine, and her eyes full of murderous intent stared straight at Brainiac. Oh wow. I thought it was some ultimate magic, but it turned out to be looking for help. I just don't know if the helper you found is useful. Brainiac still looked so arrogant, full of disdain for everyone. You can try, God insulter. As soon as the voice fell, Maeve Shadowsong's figure disappeared from the spot. Dang bang, Brainiac's body was hit by the silver wheel, and his figure flew away like a cannonball. It hit a wall in the distance directly. Brainiac's body smashed the wall into pieces. His Clark and others who came back took a breath of cold air. This woman summoned by Little Sissy was so terrifying that they couldn't hurt her at all even with all their strength. However, this woman smashed this guy away with one blow. This is too scary. Chapter 320, Maeve Shadowsong. DC Universe. On the battlefield, Brainiac slowly stood up from the rubble. His face looked a little ugly. On his body, a long wound slid down from his chest. There was no blood dripping from the wound, only thin wires and steel. Brainiac looked at Maeve Shadowsong with some caution. He finally saw a strong man with great power. Brainiac's hand brushed across the wound on his body, and suddenly, the wound was directly smoothed out, as if it had not suffered any damage. Brainiac stretched out his right hand. Bang, then, a steel rod sprang out from the ground, and was grabbed by him. Brainiac stepped on the ground with his right foot. Bang, his figure shot towards Maeve Shadowsong like a cannonball. A large pit suddenly appeared on the ground where Brainiac's right foot stepped. Around the pit, thumb-sized cracks appeared, spreading around like a spider web. Brainiac's figure was like a green lightning, passing over the ground. In the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of Maeve Shadowsong. The steel rod in his right hand fell towards Maeve Shadowsong. The silver wheel in Maeve Shadowsong's hand drew an arc and met the steel rod that Brainiac threw at him. Dang, the huge sound of steel intersecting was heard, resounding throughout the sky. Everyone covered their ears involuntarily. The sound was too loud, making them feel uncomfortable. Swish puff, Mei of Shadow-san's power was too strong. Her figure did not move at all, but Brainiac's figure fell directly into the distance, and fell directly on his feet. Fuck, bit. Brainiac stood up from the ground, and cursed loudly with some dissatisfaction. This woman looked extremely weak, but who knew that her power was so powerful that it was moving? How could there be such a powerful guy, so much stronger than him? This is not fair. Brainiac's thoughts kept flashing through his mind, looking at Mei of Shadow-san not far away. And at this moment, perhaps Mei of Shadow-san was already a little bored. She slowly raised the silver wheel in her hand and threw it towards Brainiac, who had just paid the bill. In midair, a silver light flashed and then hovered above Brainiac's head. A brilliant purple light appeared on the silver wheel and fell on Brainiac's body. Then, the silver wheel returned to Mei of Shadow-san's hand from the original path. Look at Brainiac's head again. In the eyes of everyone, an illusory shadow appeared above Brainiac's head. The illusory black shadow was like a vampire, constantly sucking out energy from Brainiac's body. The illusory shadow was also growing stronger, but Brainiac only felt that the energy in his body was disappearing little by little. In just a moment, his energy had already decreased by 1/5. This made him feel that his time of death was approaching. Although he was an intelligent life, he did not understand the feeling of death at all. In his cognition, death was disappearance. Brainiac kept urging his strength to resist the illusory black shadow above his head. However, it was useless. Even his 12th level wisdom or his copying ability had no effect on the black shadow. On the other side, Mei of Ying disappeared from the spot and flashed to the side of little Sissy, blocking the little guy in front of her to prevent her from jumping off the wall and hurting little Sissy. Seeing that his last chance was gone, Brainiac had to wait for the end of his life. In front of the TV, although the audience could not see the illusory black shadow, they knew they had won. Because the green alien invader had stopped attacking and just stood there stupidly. Even the spaceship in the sky had stopped firing. It was blown to pieces by Cyborg and Batman. At the same time, Mei Gan and Tony and others slowly landed from the sky. The soldiers watching the scene and the thousands of people watching on TV looked at Mei Gan and the others with a look of doubt and confusion. Could it be the companions of the green invader? Or an invader from another place? Although Mei Gan had appeared here before, he was standing too high at that time, so he couldn't see Mei Gan's appearance clearly. He had just experienced Brainiac's invasion, and his figure was still standing here. Mei Gan and the others landed not far away from them. Brainiac just glanced at them silently. Seeing that they were not people he knew, he ignored them. He already felt that his energy was about to run out. When the energy ran out, Brainiac would disappear from this world forever. As a planet harvester, he actually fell on a human child today. It was really tragic. Just a child who looked about 10 years old. He destroyed his planet harvester. If he knew that little Sissy was only 4 or 5 years old, he would probably explode directly. Suddenly, Brainiac looked at the monster spaceship that had not been destroyed above his head, and a gloom appeared on his face. Since he could not survive, he would take this planet with him to be buried. The thought flashed through Brainiac's mind. Then, the terrifying monster spaceship began to move. The huge tentacles inserted at the edge of the city suddenly tightened. At the same time, everyone standing on the ground felt the sudden vibration under their feet. Boom boom, the monster spaceship began to rise slowly and floated into the sky. And the city bound by the tentacles also rose slowly with it. This guy actually wanted to smash a city into the earth and destroy the earth directly like Ultron. No wonder both guys are intelligent machines, and even their ideas are similar. Feeling the vibration from the ground under their feet, Mei Gan frowned slightly, and at this moment, Brainiac on the opposite side suddenly laughed crazily and said, "Die together. Ant like earthlings." Mei Gan was a little speechless. He was about to die, but this guy was still so arrogant. "Mei, help me." Diana walked to Mei Gan's side and said to Mei Gan. Mei Gan nodded slightly. Then, Mei Gan slowly raised the staff in his hand towards the monster spaceship in the sky. The gem on the staff shone brightly. Around the monster spaceship, cracks suddenly appeared in the void, and huge vines stretched out from the cracks in the void. Then they suddenly wrapped around the monster spaceship. The huge power in the vines directly fixed the monster spaceship in place. The monster spaceship kept shaking, trying to break free from the vines. But it was useless. At the same time, the vibration on the ground finally calmed down. Chapter 321 Stop Joking. DC Universe. Looking at the stopped spaceship, Brainiac's wild smile was fixed on his face. He looked at Mei Gan not far away with some horror, and then shrank his neck with some difficulty. The woman summoned by the child was already so powerful, and he didn't expect that this ordinary looking guy would be even more powerful. And the vine seemed to be used by the little girl. Could it be that at this time, the little guy threw himself into Mei Gan's arms, acting coquettishly and accusing Brainiac at the same time? Mei Gan smiled and touched the little guy's head. He handed the little guy to Natasha's arms and then turned to look at Brainiac. At this time, 3/5 of Brainiac's energy had disappeared. In a moment, he would lose consciousness. Mei Gan's staff slowly pointed at Brainiac. Brainiac saw this scene and immediately took a few steps back. This guy was too scary. Even he, an intelligent person, felt fear, which had never happened before. At this time, the staff in Mei Gan's hand suddenly burst into light. A golden light suddenly shot out from his staff and fell on Brainiac. The golden light was very fast, and it fell on Brainiac in the blink of an eye. Before everyone could see the effect of Mei Gan's magic, Mei Gan swung his right hand and directly put Brainiac, who had just turned into a gold nugget, into his own space. Tony and others only felt the golden light flash, and Brainiac had disappeared on the spot. Mei, what kind of magic is this? A flash of golden light and the person is gone. Tony asked curiously. This is called exile. It directly exiles this guy to another space. He can only wait to die slowly. Don't worry. He can't come back. Mei Gan explained to Tony. Anyway, they don't understand, and it's not his decision. Tony and others didn't doubt anything. After all, they didn't understand any magic. Mei, what about the one in the sky? Clark looked at the monster spaceship tied up in the sky and looked at Mei Gan for advice. Now the city has been raised about 10 meters. If the spaceship is destroyed directly, the city will fall down like this, which will cause irreversible consequences to the earth. And here, it is estimated that only Mei Gan can solve this city. Even if he carries it, it is difficult to guarantee that the people in the city will not be hurt, and now they are still fixed in place. If they accidentally slip off the city, they will be smashed into a pulp. Therefore, to be on the safe side, it is better to let Mei do it. Mei Gan was stunned for a moment when he heard this, and then looked up at the ugly spaceship. He originally wanted to use it himself, but it was too ugly, so he could only destroy it. Clark, the task of lifting this city is handed over to you, and I will be responsible for dealing with the spaceship above, Mei Gan said to Clark. Don't joke, Mei, how can I lift this city? I'm afraid I will accidentally hurt them, Clark said with a wry smile. He thought Mei Gan was joking with him. I'm not kidding you, Clark. I'll cast a magic spell for you later, and you can lift the city with peace of mind, Mei Gan said to Clark. Then give it a try, Clark said with a little relief. Seeing Clark agreed, Mei Gan nodded slightly, then grabbed Clark's shoulder, and then flashed directly, and the two disappeared from the spot. When they appeared again, Mei Gan took Clark to the outside of the city, which was a desolate Gobi desert. There was no human habitation, so it was a good place to cast the God of Heaven. That's right, Mei Gan wanted to cast the God of Heaven on Clark, so that he could grow bigger and carry the city. When the two stood firm, Mei Gan's staff burst into golden light. Suddenly, the sky was filled with golden light, dyeing the clouds in the sky golden. A golden light suddenly rushed down from the sky and landed on Clark. In an instant, Clark's body surged, stretched, and began to grow. In the blink of an eye, Clark's body had become more than 100 meters tall, and his body was grayish white. Clark looked down at the houses and cars on the ground that looked like toys, and stretched out his hand to look at his grayish white clothes and skin. Feeling the powerful power on his body, Clark unconsciously clenched his fists. If he could always have such power, he would need the help of others, and he could directly protect this blue planet. However, this power was not his own. He could feel that as time went by, the power on his body would disappear forever. At this moment, Mei Gan's figure appeared on Clark's shoulder. Then he said to Clark, Go and lift up the city. I will deal with the monster spaceship on it." Clark did not speak, but just nodded slightly. Then, Mei Gan's figure disappeared directly on Clark's shoulder. Clark hurriedly walked towards the city. Boom boom. The grayish-white footsteps stepped down, and the ground shook, as if there was an earthquake. When he came to the side of the city, Clark leaned over, and saw that the people in the city were like ants. He even saw Diana and the others looking at him in surprise. Clark's face was calm. Although this feeling was good, he had already had this feeling when he flew in the sky before. Clark stretched out his grey-white hands, and directly held up the city rising in the air. Just as Clark held up the continent, Mei Gan also began to move. Floating above Diana and the others, Mei Gan's staff burst into a brilliant light, and a fiery red light suddenly bloomed around the monster spaceship. Then, everyone saw a beautiful picture. Fiery red roses bloomed around the monster spaceship, one after another. In just a blink of an eye, those roses bloomed all around the spaceship. It was like a rose garden growing in the air. So beautiful. However, at this moment, a rose petal slowly fell, and then all the petals fell off. The petals all over the sky floated in the air, dyeing the entire sky fiery red. The more beautiful things are, the more they will hurt people. The next scene confirmed this sentence. Suddenly, a purple glow appeared on the petals. Then, the purple light bloomed all over the sky, and the monster spaceship in the sky quickly turned into ashes under the purple light. In less than a blink of an eye, the monster spaceship hanging in the sky disappeared completely. The petals in the sky also disappeared, leaving only the blue sky. The warm sunshine once again shone on everyone. This disaster was like a dream for those people who have resumed their actions. Chapter 322. Damn it. Marvel Universe. In an uninhabited Gobi desert, 3 figures were discussing something. They were 3 dreadlords. Their flesh wings behind them had exposed their identities. "I have found the most powerful guy in the world. I went there to investigate, but there was a very powerful summon beast there. I was afraid of alerting the enemy, so I didn't continue to investigate. Now I'm back to discuss with you." One of the dreadlords with red flesh wings said to the other 2. "I went to those leaders to inquire, but I didn't get any news about the Void Lords." A dreadlord with blue flesh wings said to the side. "Maybe you have also inquired that this planet is invaded by other invaders, but they are not those guys of the Void Lords, so it seems that we have to go to the strongest person on this planet to investigate." In the center, a dreadlord with green flesh wings nodded and said, "This green dreadlord is like the leader of the 3, and the other 2 dreadlords follow him." "Boss, you are right. We must go to the strongest person to find out. So, Titus, tell us what you have found out." The blue dreadlord said to the red dreadlord next to him. "Boss, I have found out." Titus turned to look at the green dreadlord and said, "It found out about Mei Gan." Hearing the news found out by his subordinates, the green dreadlord rubbed his chin, pondered for a moment and said, "We, the dreadlord clan, are not good at fighting, so we can't go to them directly to ask. After all, from what you said, that guy is very powerful. So, we have to use another method, and this happens to be our strongest place." The green dreadlord smiled and said to his 2 subordinates, "And beside him." The other 2 dreadlords nodded their heads, agreeing with their boss words. "Well, I have a plan. Let's go. I just found out some information about a human ruler, and he just happens to control the military power here." After the green dreadlord finished speaking, he turned and walked towards the city. The other 2 dreadlords followed him. After a few breaths, 3 figures slowly disappeared in the Gobi Desert. Kalimda Street. Mei Gan led everyone back to the turret. In his arms, little Sissy had an excited look on her face. Just after she landed in the city, she was taken to visit other places by Diana and others. Not long after they walked, suddenly, many people rushed out holding photos of her in a battlesuit and shouted her name. They looked like her fans. The little girl, who had never experienced this before, felt very fresh. She had been a superhero in the Marvel Universe for so long, but she had never seen such a scene. Unexpectedly, she would be treated like this just by being a superhero here. The little girl didn't know that in the Marvel universe, she only fought robbers and thieves, and her father Mei Gan was blocking her in front, so how could she be treated like this? But here it's different. This time, it's no problem to say that she saved the whole world, and it's not surprising to have such treatment. I just don't know how these guys got the purpose of their trip and organized such a big battle so quickly. Mei Gan couldn't stand this scene of being watched by people, so he brought everyone back here. The little girl didn't enjoy the shouts and admiration of the crowd yet. She was brought back by Mei Gan, and her excited expression suddenly changed. She pouted her little mouth and looked at Mei Gan with dissatisfaction. Okay, don't pout. When you grow up, there will be such a battle again, and dad won't stop you. Now you are still young, you can't experience too much of this. Mei Gan said the truth. If you enjoy vanity like this when you are young, it will be terrible when you grow up. Okay. Seeing Mei Gan say this, little Sissy had to agree and hope that she could grow up soon. She has grown up much faster than many people, and she wants to grow up faster. Just when everyone was going to go back to their homes, no one remembered that they seemed to have forgotten an important thing. In the DC universe, where the war just happened, in a small room, several S.H.I.E.L.D. agents were standing together, guarding Coulson's body on the ground. After Coulson was killed, several people dragged Coulson's body back to a house not far away, waiting for the end of the war, so that they could bring Coulson back to life. One of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents has experienced this kind of thing several times. It's so familiar. Speaking of this, now looking at Coulson on the ground, the agent didn't have any worries or sadness, but wanted to laugh. His superior is really unlucky. He died once after a while, and then went to Mr. Magician to revive. I don't know if he was cursed by the god in charge of death when he died for the first time. Now their director is probably going to have a headache again. A large sum of money must be paid to Mr. Magician for each resurrection. If this goes on, their director will suspect that Chief Coulson and Mr. Magician are working together to cheat him. Not to mention, Nick is likely to have such an idea. William, the fight outside should be over. Do you want to go out and take a look? At this time, one of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents said to the agent who had been following Coulson, "It should be over. The vibration just now should be the return of the city. I'll go and take a look." William nodded and then walked out while speaking. His steps were slow, and he opened the door carefully and walked into the living room. A moment later, William came back. He looked at his colleagues expressionlessly and said, "Guys, maybe we have been forgotten. The war has already ended, and Chief Natasha and the others have already gone back." At the end of the speech, he was aggrieved. He was not aggrieved for himself, but for his Chief Coulson. No one remembered that he had sacrificed himself, and he was left out here. It's so tragic. Waiter, they are all gone. Only we are left. Several S.H.I.E.L.D. agents looked at William and then looked at Coulson on the ground. There was pity in their eyes. Let's go. Let's go back too. We still have to report what happened here to the director. After hearing this, several people didn't say anything and directly carried Coulson's body on the ground and then walked outside. Not long after, at the exit of the space crack, several S.H.I.E.L.D. agents finally carried Coulson here. As soon as they walked out of the space crack, they began to practice neck fury. Waiter, Coulson is dead again. After Nick received the news, there was an expression of disbelief on his face, and he shouted speechlessly, "Yes, sir. Why didn't Natasha tell me just now? She must have forgotten. Fuck you." Chapter 323. This time it was definitely not my fault. Marvel Universe, S.H.I.E.L.D. Trident Headquarters. Nick Fury cut off the signal and touched his bald head in annoyance. You know what? Now Nick really doubted whether Coulson had partnered with Mei Gan. If he hadn't seen Coulson die so miserably, he would definitely think that this was the answer. Well, he just asked the agents to let him see Coulson's body. It must be said that it was a good thing that Coulson died miserably this time. Otherwise he would probably be labeled a traitor in Nick's mind. Now Tony is thinking about whether he should never let Coulson go on a mission again. Even if it's not for Coulson's sake, considering the wallet of S.H.I.E.L.D, he should transfer Coulson back to the office. If he died a few more times, S.H.I.E.L.D would probably go bankrupt. Otherwise, it would be better not to save him directly, so that Coulson would not have to endure such pain next time. Although Nick thought so, after all, Coulson was his most capable subordinate, and he still had to pay him. Kalimda Street District. When several agents carried Coulson to the door of the flower shop, placed his body neatly, and were about to knock on the door, Natasha, who had just walked out of the second floor balcony, immediately touched her head a little embarrassedly. I didn't expect that after so many missions, she actually forgot about Coulson this time. How should I blame her when Coulson is resurrected? Natasha felt a little guilty thinking about it, and then she quickly jumped to the second floor of the flower shop next door, and went directly to call Mei Gan. Mei, I think you have to go out and check the door. Walking into the kitchen, and seeing Mei Gan who was making dinner, Natasha was suddenly stunned. After a few breaths, she shook her head, and said to Mei Gan, "What's wrong with the door?" Hearing Natasha's voice, Mei Gan turned around, and asked with some confusion. As for Natasha's arrival, Mei Gan was already used to it. Even if Audrey was there, she often turned over from the second floor balcony. Don't say that he is the only one here now. The little guy went to Uncle Khan's house. It is said that Aunt May made delicious food for her. We seem to have forgotten Coulson. He is at the door now, Natasha said with some guilt, and the guilt was for Coulson. Mei Gan was stunned when he heard this, and then he looked towards the door. When he saw Coulson's tragic body at the door, Mei Gan immediately gasped. How could Coulson die so miserably this time? Who did it? Why is Coulson so miserable? Is he on another mission? Because when Mei Gan got the news, Coulson had been dragged away by several agents, so Mei Gan didn't pay much attention to Coulson. It's normal not to know. He went there with us, and he was killed directly after the guy chopped his arm, while holding little Sissy. After that, several agents dragged his body into a house and protected it. Natasha explained to Mei Gan. So that's it. No wonder I didn't see him just now. Let's go. Go out and revive this unlucky guy. This time I won't charge Nick's money. After all, Coulson was dragged down by little Sissy. Mei Gan turned off the fire and walked outside. Natasha followed Mei Gan, and there was a light flashing in her eyes when she saw his back. Walking out of the flower shop, the neighbors had already gathered around. Everyone was somewhat immune to this matter, especially when the target was Coulson. You see, Johnny came out with a plate of spaghetti to watch, and while eating, he was looking at Coulson's body and commenting on it. From time to time, he said a few words to Banner next to him. Banner was shirtless and wearing a pair of big shorts on his lower body. He picked his teeth with a toothpick and responded to Johnny next to him. You know what, Johnny, since I used a toothpick last time I went to Khan's place, I think this thing is better than dental floss. Banner threw the toothpick in his hand into the trash can next to him and said to Johnny, I also prepared it, but I haven't used it yet. By the way, where did you get these pants? They look very fashionable. Johnny swallowed a mouthful of spaghetti and looked at Banner's lower body with shining eyes. Turn your damn eyes away, disgusting. Banner pushed Johnny's head aside and answered his question. I bought this when I was bored and took Betty to Chinatown last time. It's very comfortable to wear. The aunt who sold me the pants said it's very popular in the East. Banner showed off to Johnny while lifting his big pants. Take me to buy a few next time. They look very good. Johnny nodded and said. The scene here made Mei Gan, who had just walked out of the store, a little stunned. This is directly orientalized, and he and Uncle Khan have never worn it like this. Where did Banner learn this guy? And Johnny, do you disrespect Coulson so much? People are lying on the ground, and you are eating noodles while watching. What's more terrifying is that they make a slurping sound from time to time. Mei Gan's forehead is already covered with black lines. If it weren't for the wrong occasion, Mei Gan would kick these two guys back to their homes one by one. I didn't pay attention to these two guys. After all, out of sight, out of mind. Mei Gan looked down at Coulson on the ground and then took out his warhammer. However, Mei Gan was still a little confused. Coulson was already dead. Why didn't Death send his soul back this time? This was not in line with her character. Mei Gan didn't think about anything else, just a little confused. After all, they had known each other for so long, there would still be some feelings, no matter what kind of feelings. Mei Gan didn't think about it anymore. He directly performed the resurrection technique. A golden light fell from the sky and landed on Coulson's body. At this time, Mei Gan saw a white hand throwing a transparent soul out of space. You don't have to guess, you know, that hand must be the goddess of death. Mei Gan was a little confused. What was death doing, throwing Coulson out like this, and not showing up? Why are you hiding? Unable to figure it out, Mei Gan asked death directly. Mei, listen to me, this time it was definitely not me, and I don't know why his soul ran to the kingdom of death. Hearing Mei Gan's question, Death, who was hiding in the kingdom of death, hurried out and defended himself. Perhaps he was afraid that Mei Gan would misunderstand something, and his face was still a little anxious. You don't have to explain. No, Mei, you must listen to my explanation. This time it really wasn't me. You have to believe me. Before Mei Gan finished speaking, Death said hurriedly, listen to me first. No, Mei, listen to my explanation first. Enough, do you still let me talk? Mei Gan stared at Death and said with some intolerance, you say this. Death stood aside like a bullied little girl and said a little aggrieved, okay, go away. I know it wasn't me who did it this time. Why are you in a hurry to explain? I'm not blind and can't see what killed him. Mei Gan was a little speechless, making me seem like I was bullying you. Get rid of the elder sister. You are the lady of death who rules over souls, and yet you are the tomboy who always talks about your mother. Chapter 324. Has someone destroyed your physical therapy clinic again? The next day, in a secret base somewhere in the United States, Banner's father-in-law, General Ross, was sitting in his office writing something. At this moment, three figures appeared next to Ross in a surrounding manner. Ross noticed something was wrong, and his eyes quickly opened from the documents on the desk, looked up, and looked at the three weird-looking demons. Ross's pupils shrank sharply, but the expression on his face never changed. He put down the pen in his hand, put his right hand under the table very naturally, and then said to the three fear demons, who are you? What are you doing here? Ross's voice was a little low, and his eyes stared at the three fear demons, trying to find information from them. Human high-level General Ross among the three fear demons, the leader with green wings, stood in front of Ross and said to him, you have checked me. Where are you from? Ross frowned when he heard this and had a bad premonition in his heart. What are these three guys who look like demons going to do? Are they also invaders? The earth is really full of disasters. But fortunately, there are adults here. Ross thought so, and he had already passed on the news here. Ross's hand was waving naturally. It seemed to be conveying some information. The three demons did not notice that on a shelf not far from Ross, there was a white owl standing, and the owl's eyes were staring at the bottom of the desk. General Ross, we all know that you were bullied by those so-called superheroes, so we are here to help you get revenge. The green fear demon's voice was full of temptation. Even if it was such an ordinary word, Ross would have a voice in his mind that promise him echoed in his mind. However, fortunately, his body was transformed by the energy of death, so he could still hold on to this trick. So, how are you going to help me? Although he resisted the temptation of these demons, Ross still wanted to find out what these guys were going to do. The three fear demons thought that Ross had been bewitched by them, and their ugly faces showed ugly smiles. The three dreadlords looked at each other, and finally the green dreadlord replied, as long as you listen to us, we can kill all those superheroes. Even if you want to catch them as specimens, it's okay. After all, we are just the vanguard. Behind us, we have our powerful Burning Legion. Even if you don't cooperate with us, when our legion comes, this world will definitely be destroyed under the blazing flames. Then if I cooperate with you, can we avoid destruction? When Ross heard the Burning Legion from the demon's mouth, his heart couldn't help but get nervous. Legion, it was a huge team. And these three guys who looked very powerful were just the vanguard. If the real master came, it would be unimaginable. He couldn't control this kind of thing, so he had to listen to the information of the master. Thinking of this, Ross began to continue to get more information from these guys, and a time Of course, as long as you join us, then you will get eternal life and powerful power, as well as that huge power. The Dreadlords continued to paint a big cake for Ross. If Ross heard these pies in the past, he might be excited and join them greedily. However, Ross has been controlled by Mei Gan now, and he will not have any greed for these pies at all. So, what do you want me to do? Ross said to the 3 Dreadlords. I have to say, General Ross, you made the right choice. The Green Dreadlord showed a triumphant smile, and then gave Ross a thumbs up. Just as the Dreadlords and others were telling Ross about their plans. In the Crimdo district, Mei Gan, who was fishing, also received the news from Ross. Mei Gan frowned slightly at the news from the receiver. He just wanted to curse now. What kind of plane? Why are there garbage coming out to disturb his leisurely life? Those disgusting Dreadlords again. Why are there still Dreadlords in this world? Can't they be killed? Mei Gan listened to the description of the enemy over there and cursed in his heart in silence. Although he cursed in his mouth, he still spread his mental power over there to see what happened over there. In an instant, Mei Gan saw the scene over there. Listening to the 3 Dreadlords telling Ross about their plans, Megandons knew the identities of these guys. The vanguard of the Burning Legion, that is, that guy, S.H.I.E.L.D, is coming. It is estimated that the first to come are the 2 guys, Dan or Archimond. After all, they are S.H.I.E.L.D's right-hand men. Megan wondered whether to kill these 3 guys or let them summon the Burning Legion. However, when he heard that those guys planned to kidnap his daughter, Megan directly gave up the idea of keeping them. The sudden coldness immediately surprised Steve and Tony, who were not far away. Turning to look at Megan, who was full of murderous intent, Tony asked with some confusion, Mei, what happened? Did someone destroy your physical therapy clinic again? Tony stood up and looked in the direction of the physical therapy clinic while speaking. Seeing that it was very quiet over there and nothing happened, he said to himself, no. How can it be so quiet? What happened? The guy I mentioned last time sent people here, and those guys actually want to target little Sissy. Mei Gan put the fishing rod in his hand aside and said in a cold voice, wait, how come someone is targeting little Sissy again? Mei, your reputation as the #1 person on the planet is too great. It seems that you should erase your existence, otherwise someone will always target little Sissy. Tony tidied his clothes, turned around and looked at Mei Gan and said, okay, you go and talk to Nick and erase my existence. After I'm ready, I will directly erase everyone's memory of me on the earth. Mei Gan felt that this was a good idea. The coldness on his face disappeared, and he patted Tony's shoulder happily. Is the enemy the so-called President S.H.I.E.L.D you mentioned last time? Steve stood up and looked at Mei Gan and asked. Yes, that guy sent them. I knew from the last time I saw those demons that he would not leave a Void Lord alone. I didn't expect him to send someone here so soon. Mei Gan nodded and replied. Then let's go and deal with them now. Tony said directly, already impatient to tear those guys who caught Sissy's attention into pieces. Mei Gan nodded and then teleported directly to Ross's location. Chapter 325 Drunken Fist. Marvel Universe. In a military area of the United States, Ross listened to the plan of the leading Dreadlord with a serious face. Although he did not show any expression on the surface, he had already sentenced these 3 guys to death in his heart. They actually wanted to touch the reverse scale of his master. I'm afraid they don't know his name as the Ash Mage. Ross thought so. Just at this time, he finally heard the plan of these guys. They just wanted to kidnap little Sissy and let Mei Gan come to find out the information of the so-called Void Lord. Just because of this information, he was going to be killed. It was really sad. He could just go and ask directly. Although he might be killed, at least he would still have a chance to survive. Kidnapping little Sissy would not have any chance to survive. Ross looked at the 3 Dreadlords with a look like he was looking at a fool. In his opinion, Mei Gan must have received the news. After all, the owl was given to him by Mei Gan. How could what happened here escape Mei Gan's eyes? The death of these guys is coming soon. Just at this time, a blue light shone on Ross's body. In an instant, the 3 Dreadlords felt that something was wrong. After all, they were all demons with brains, not like those brainless lumps. You're playing with us, Ross, the blue Dreadlord said to Ross angrily. I've always wanted to know how smart the dreadlords who have always been trusted by Kil'jaeden are. It turns out that they are also brainless. Mei Gan appeared beside Ross with Tony and Steve. Mei Gan looked at the three dreadlords with some disdain. How do you know us? You even know Lord Kil'jaeden. Who are you? Or are you from Azeroth? Hearing Mei Gan's words, the three dreadlords who participated in the Azeroth raiders were immediately shocked and looked at Mei Gan in horror. I'm not from Azeroth, and I have never been to your world. As for how I know, why should I tell you? Also, you certainly won't think that I know that you are preparing to invade Azeroth, and you also want to use S.H.I.E.L.D to create a death army, so that Azeroth will be in chaos and the invasion plan of the Burning Legion will be easier to implement. Mei Gan said expressionlessly to the three dreadlords. The three dreadlords trembled all over when they heard this. They finally realized how powerful this guy in front of them was. He knew everything about their world without being in their world. Even Kil'jaeden and Master Rakiman didn't know about this, otherwise the two masters wouldn't let them come to inquire about the news. Not to mention the two masters, even Master Sargeras, who was standing at the back, the founder of the Burning Legion, couldn't have this ability. These are two different worlds. A magician in this world actually knew the information of their world in advance. How did he do this? How did he know? They couldn't help but be shocked. This kind of thing, even if they racked their brains, they couldn't think of it. Haha. Fool, your people are being played around by S.H.I.E.L.D, the Lich King created by Kil'jaeden, and you don't even know that S.H.I.E.L.D has long wanted to get rid of Kil'jaeden's control. Mei Gan said more today, just to complain about these so-called cunning dreadlords. No, it's impossible. S.H.I.E.L.D has been tortured for so long. How could he betray Lord Kil'jaeden? You are talking nonsense. The dreadlords couldn't believe that their people were played around by S.H.I.E.L.D and said angrily, forget it, you are dead anyway, so I won't say so much to you. Mei Gan shook his head at them and then walked towards the three dreadlords. The three dreadlords looked at each other in panic at first and then found that they had been locked by Mei Gan. Knowing that they could no longer escape, they had to grit their teeth and attack Mei Gan first. The three dreadlords attacked Mei Gan from three directions. In front of Mei Gan, the green dreadlord sent a group of rotten bats towards Mei Gan. In an instant, a foul smell of decay filled the small office. Behind Mei Gan, Tony and the others could not stand it and blocked their noses, then stepped back uncomfortably. However, they could not escape the rotten stench. They almost vomited. Fortunately, at this time, Mei Gan waved his hand to support a magic power to cover the few people and then drove away the stench. Otherwise, it is estimated that the few people would be killed by the stench. Mei Gan was also somewhat fortunate that he had not used this skill, otherwise his image would be ruined. For these disgusting things, Mei Gan opened his mouth and a ball of fire came out of his mouth, sweeping towards the rotten bats and instantly burned the bats to ashes. It was the skill of the Panda Brew Fairy, the fire breathing technique. On the left, a halo appeared under the feet of the blue dreadlord, and then the halo spread to the other two dreadlords. Then, his figure approached Mei Gan, and the claws shining with cold light grabbed Mei Gan. Behind Mei Gan, looking at the mysterious runes on the ground and the familiar halo, Steve and Tony's eyes widened. The two recognized this halo because Mei Gan often used it. Could it be that Mei was really a human from their world? Otherwise, how could he have many of the same magics? The two thought secretly. In front, there were dreadlords attacking Mei Gan on both sides. On Mei Gan's right, the red dreadlord waved his claws at Mei Gan, and magic power gathered on Mei Gan's body. However, those magic powers could never descend on Mei Gan's body. When they fell on Mei Gan's body, they were dispelled by a layer of invisible power. HMPH, I won't play with you three rubbish anymore. You still want to summon hellfire? Mei Gan looked at the green dreadlord who wanted to summon hellfire in front of him, and couldn't help but snorted coldly. You know, if these guys summoned hellfire, it wouldn't be a quiet kill. It would cause a lot of noise. As soon as the voice fell, Mei Gan's figure disappeared directly on the spot, and by the way, he also dodged the claws on the left that were slashing towards him. Bang bang bang, three sounds rang out in this office, and as several people looked up, I saw that the 3 dreadlords were directly shattered on the spot, and their bodies were directly broken into countless pieces of meat and scattered on the ground. Mei Gan's thumb and index finger that had completed the hook shape slowly released. The first time he tried this skill, that could be said to be a martial arts skill, Mei Gan felt very refreshed. The refreshing feeling of punching the flesh. That was exactly the drunken boxing skill from the neutral hero Panda Brewmaster. In the game, Drunken Fist is a passive skill and an evasion skill. Although there is a chance that the enemy will be hurt, that little bit of damage is really useless. However, the Drunken Fist extracted by Mei Gan has become a set of boxing techniques. It is so powerful even without drinking. If it is used after drinking, the power will be multiplied several times. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.